They have a choice, because the void is screaming, and Peter Quill hears the tone that means Nowhere's spine will crack. Rocket scans show a blackstone harmonic pulsing from a distant coordinate, not their galaxy, but adjacent like a mirror with teeth. Gamora says they go, because leaving a home to shatter is a smaller death now to prevent a greater one later. The Milano's ether fold sails are key to the harmonic and tuned with Mantis's calm, branching through math and memory. The breach opens like a wound in a god, and they fall through. The sky on the other side is not a sky but a prayer burned to ash. The Milano punches into blue-black weather over a world of stacked steel and soot, continental hives stitched by manufactorum scars. Vox traffic claws their ears in waves, human voices layered with the machine liturgy, fear beating time. Mega Borealis, breach on subsprawl H-17, green lightning, saints preserve us. Peter steadies the ship. The etherfold drive whines like something that remembers drowning. Below, a hive city stretches like an iron reef. Spires spear the clouds and vent stained smoke. Processional lights trace veins down into the underhive. High above the tallest basilica, a war is already happening in precise lines. Sleek fighters shaped like knife wings dive in trios. Tracer fire beads the air. Explosions bloom in poor colors. On a charred buttress, a child's paper saint flutters and is gone. Peter opens the general hail. Unidentified Imperial Command. This is a friendly. We're here to help. He tastes ozone, sweat, a thin coil of fear that is not his. Mantis is pale and very still in her harness. She presses fingertips to her temples. So many minds, she whispers. They all pray at once. It is heavy. The reply is ritual and steel. This is Lord Admiral Kassaran of Battle Group 4 Fax. Identify. If you are a Xenos or abominable construct, I will see you burned clean. His voice is old iron pushed into a human shape. Rocket drags a cable with his teeth and slams it into the board. We can argue theology after we stop that wing eating your launch batteries. The Milano rolls hard. Drax braces against bulkhead ribs as the hull hums and the etherfold sail collapses into sparks. Nebula's ocular implants flick narrow bands. Vector lock on the predators, she says. They fly like soldiers who died and forgot to fall. 3 knife-wing fighters arc toward a Prometheum farm on the hive's shoulder. Peter angles the Milano. Groot, he says, and the tree answers by flowing vines over the ceiling struts, feeding extra sap to the ship's cracked spine. Gamora's hand settles on Peter's, a weight and a warning. Cost, she says. We cannot bleed the drive dry. The Milano drops like a thrown hammer between the knives and the Prometheum stacks. Rocket vents heat forward. The fighters split, white contrails carving prayers in the air. Peter fires a measured burst, not to kill, but to herd, pushing them toward an empty slice of sky. He fires again and denatures one wing. The pilot sheathes itself in emerald light and becomes a meteor streaking away. The second loops, meeting Nebula's predictive arc. Gamora takes the belly turret and draws a clean line through the canopy. On the ground, a procession of workers pressed in grey moves in slow disbelief. A woman clutches a child. A priest raises a brass icon to a sky that just turned into a knife fight. Mantis closes her eyes and breathes slow, peeling panic off the crowd like damp cloth. Run that way, she whispers into nothing. There is a door in the wall. Go. In the underhive, a bolt lamp flickers on without a hand to strike it. Friendly craft, the Admiral says after a heartbeat. He does not apologize. We see your fire. Hold north-northeast. The spires are under renewed air assault. Emperor, guide your hand. Peter nods as if the man can see him and cuts toward the spire cluster. They cross a storm of machine smoke. Drax watches it like a veteran watches a chapel, solemn, shoulders square. "These people," he says, and his voice is ground gravel. "They stand in lines under a sky that bleeds. They do not go mad. I respect this." A knife wing pierces the cloud deck and angles for the highest spire. On that spire's gallery, a white-robed woman with a flamer stands beside a man in black with a symbol like a stylized eye. The woman's face is upturned. The black-clad man speaks without moving his mouth, and his words ring inside Peter's head like a clean blade hitting a stone. "Name yourselves." Peter flinches. Mantis flinches like she is struck. Nebula's jaw clenches. "Telepathic intrusion," she says. "Not elegant." Peter's voice is steady. "Name is Peter Quill. We don't mean harm." The Milano shroud shivers. The etherfold drive ticks with heat. Red warnings like stigmata across Rocket's board. Rocket feels the numbers like pain. "We need to land," he says, "or the drive eats itself and feeds us to whatever nightmare-scented ocean we just crossed." Peter sees the spire's gallery. The woman in white, the black man, the rune-etched steel beneath their boots. He makes a choice. "We land there," he says. We show our hands. They punch retros and carve hard into a balcony that is not meant for anything that flies. The Milano skids, bites iron, locks like a beast digging in. The flamer woman doesn't flinch. The black-clad man steps forward. His eyes are winter. "I am Inquisitor Verena Holt, Ordo Hereticus," he says with his mouth this time. "You stand on holy stone. You bear alien blood and profane tool. You have one chance to explain the provenance of your presence." Mantis sways. Her fingers tremble. The emotions around the spire are a cathedral in flood. She steadies herself on Groot's forearm. Groot murmurs in slow wood tones, sap rising, bark plates knitting as they harden against the city's cold. Peter unbuckles. He holsters his weapon slow, palms open. "We came because a resonance in your sky called to something we live on," he says. "We came because if we did not, we would lose the place where we keep our memories. We helped because people were going to die. We asked to help more." The flamer woman studies his face. "Sister Marshal Agnes of the Order of the Argent Shroud," she says. "If you lie, I burn you. If you tell the truth, I burn something else with you standing beside me." Rocket slides off his seat, ears twitching. Love the clarity. He sets a box on the deck and kicks it to the Inquisitor. Scans. Something ugly is singing in your dirt. It sounds like Blackstone. It sounds like a mouth that never breathes. Inquisitor Holt nods once, tight. He touches a stud on his gorget. Vox clicks in ritual patterns. "Admiral," he says, "we will hold this platform. Redirect Block 47 to the Eastern Void Shield emitters. The alien craft is conditionally tolerated. Its pilots will submit to doctrinal review after the crisis." "Conditional tolerance acknowledged," the Admiral answers. His restraint is a blade. Enemy wing numbers are climbing, and ground signatures, multiple, unknown pattern. Green energy outgassing at the base of Mega Borealis. Peter looks down and sees it. On the city's lowest courses, in the shadow of stacked habs and the mouths of tunnel arteries, light blooms. Not the orange flares of Promethium or the blue-white of fusion, but a thin, perfect green that eats color as it spreads. Lines etch themselves into the world. Right angles, sharp planes. A monolith rises like a tombstone commissioned by a civilization that wanted geometry to hurt. Gamora breathes the word she hates. Necrons. Drax's hands flex. He remembers a vault of mirrors and a flensing beam peeling flesh into math. "We cut them," he says. "We cut them until they stop moving." Inquisitor Holt's face does not change, but something behind his eyes hardens. Then you know the name of the ancient sin in our soil, he says. 97 recorded tombs pacified across 1,000 years. 10,000 unrecorded. Sister Marshal, hold the spires. Admiral, full bombman pattern Sigma on the green rise. Quill, if that is your name, you will not leave my sight. Mantis touches the rail. The stone is cold and slick with the mist of the hive's breath. Below, people run, and they are the same shape as all people when the earth opens. Small, determined, stubborn. She speaks softly. They are not ready for the fear that comes with those lights. The fear is wrong. It does not belong to them. Rocket snaps his kit open. He drags out a spine of cracked crystals, dials etched in his own knife-scratch script. He thinks in angles. Their fields, he mutters. They damned the wrong things. They shaved the warp. Our etherfold runs on a different song, but the harmonics overlap. We enter their shadow, we lose thrust, and maybe a little of our minds. Nebula maps the city with her gaze. Every data ghost she can pull, power lines, defense turrets, tower height, gets slotted into a model only she can see. If the monolith anchors near the generator temples, they will shatter the void shields, she says. Then your orbital strikes will cook your people. Then we meet them in the throat, Peter says. We don't wait. Sister Marshal Agnes steps closer. The flamer in her hands is a relic with teeth. I do not fight beside Xenos, she says, which is a lie she wants to be true. But I fight before I watch a city die. If you can bring fire to the lowest courses, bring it now. The Emperor will judge us later. Groot, Peter says. Bridge. Groot nods and leans out over the balcony. Vines spool out of him in green and brown torrents, threading across the yawning industrial abyss between the spire and a lower habstack. The vines thicken and braid, a living causeway growing out over the city's throat. People on the lower stack stare up and then start to cross. A child with a paper saint steps onto the vine and laughs. Groot raises hand-like branches to steady them all. The bridge hums with sap and life, and for a heartbeat the city has a different spine. They move. Peter and Gamora go first, the Sister Marshal at their flank, Drax behind like a wall that walks. Nebula scans and calls routes. Rocket rides on Groot's shoulder, pulling coils of wire and a fistful of grenades that stink of stolen tech and bad intentions. Mantis slides her hands along the rail, whispering steadiness down into the currents of panic. On a prox level above the hive's transit wells, they meet the first true wave. The Necron warriors come out of the green light like the city's bones learn to march. They walk in lockstep across the top of a dead conveyor belt. Eye lights burn like failures that learn to see. Peter kneels, sets his blasters to narrow beam, and gorgeously picks a line through the leading rank. His beams score, stagger, and he keeps shooting because that is how you teach muscle its task in a place where thinking gets you killed. Gamora lunges into the gap he makes, her blade finding the seam in a chest plate and driving it open. The robot thing falls like an insult collapsing. Drax meets the second with nothing between his hands. He pulls it apart with steady force. He is slower now than he once was, but he is more deliberate. He drops the pieces and keeps moving. He doesn't roar. There is dignity in his work. Rocket hurls a handful of saucers under the belt, and they skitter away like bright coins. Cover, he says, and the saucers pop into shields, domes of crackling blue that contain and choke the green beams for precious seconds. Mantis breathes deep and spreads her hands. Panic buckles, chunks of fear loosen their grip and people sprint faster. Groot spreads, bark plates unfolding into a wedge. Green fire strikes and boils sap. Groot grows over it, plank by plank, building his own armor out of pain. His eyes harden, and he says in a voice that creaks, I am Groot, and it means, I will hold. They clear the belt. Nebula points them down a cargo chute that stinks of lubricants and prayer smoke. Left, she says. Then down, then through the maintenance altar into the generatorum. The monolith's projection lines converge there. They move like a knife in an artery. Steel walls sweat. The hive's breath is hot and chemical and holy. They pass a mural where a saint holds a gear like a sun. They pass a boy who has not moved since the bombs fell. Mantis kneels and touches his shoulder. He blinks and breath catches. He says nothing. He stands and walks toward the light where Groot's bridge still glows. They burst into a cathedral of machines. The generatorum's pillars are titans asleep. Choir rails ring the central pit, and below, the monolith's projection has already traced thin lines of green across the stone. Necron's scarabs skitter like coins with legs. A priest stands on a dais, hands raised, eyes full of terror he refuses. Sister Marshal Agnes strides forward, and the flamer speaks in tongue. Fire rolls out, bright and terrible, washing over scarabs and making their neat bodies pop. Gamora steps into the gap, and her blade becomes an answer to a question the Generatorum never asked. Peter runs for the control plinth, Rocket riding his shoulder, wires like living veins in his hands. "Give me 30 seconds, Rocket says. "I'll teach their field to look at itself and forget what it was." 20. Nebula counters. She kneels and plunges her hand into a shrine of braided cables. Her face goes slack, then hard. She bites off a cry as the system tries to bite her back. "I'm in. They are clean. The lines are clean. Why are your machines praying at me?" "It is how they work," the priest says, voice breaking. He is a man of bone and soot. He has seen too much. He does not understand anything about the people in front of him, and he loves them for a beat. It pleases them. Green lightning drops out of the air, a Gauss beam ripping a hole through the choir rail where Drax was about to step. Drax freezes, then reverses direction with measured grace. The Necron immortal at the far edge of the pit tracks him, recalibrating. Mantis slides a cut prayer bell off a hook and throws it. It rings as it goes. The immortal turns its head for a fraction of a second, because memory is a disease. And Drax is already there, and the immortal is in two pieces. Peter holds the plinth with hands that know more about ships than cities. Rocket whispers ugly, beautiful things to the field. It shudders, hungry, then dazzled by its own reflection. It stills. The etherfold drive in Peter's chest sends heat changes. The ship hears its kin. The warning lights dim from holy red to ordinary yellow. "Now," Nebula says. "Now," Rocket says, and slams a fist-sized charge into the plinth shadow, where the green is brightest. "Step back," he adds, unnecessary. The charge opens like a flower. It doesn't explode so much as invert the idea of up in a clean sphere the size of a small chapel. Gravity stutters. The monolith's traced geometry snarls and forgets where its lines meet. Scarabs fall like rain in the wrong direction. Inquisitor Holt watches from the balcony above. His hand tightens on his staff. He does not like the beauty of the wrong, but he cannot deny the utility. Sister Marshal Agnes's flamer eats the last of the scarabs on the choir, and her voice is a blade through the smoke. "Hold the line," she says. "Hold." The Generatorum groans. The monolith's light recedes a step. Men chant louder because they have something to chant about again. Peter sags against the plinth and breathes. Mantis staggers and catches herself. Groot steps down from his own armor, and the bark sloughs off, black and wet at the edges. Rocket sits down hard and laughs once, not because anything is funny. Codex note: Blackstone-derived null geometries can be disrupted by mirrored oscillation seeded into a host field. However, metaphysical recoil increases exponentially with proximity to a pariah-class node. Do not rest long, Nebula says, eyes wide and dark with reflected green. This is only a finger. The hand will follow. The Vox screams something high and thin. Admiral Sauron's voice cuts through, flat with control. Surface scans confirming broader emergence under Mega Borealis. Monoliths plural. Orbital lance batteries acquiring. Void shield integrity at 81% and falling. All units stand to. Hold your saints. Inquisitor Holt turns his head toward Peter, the motion elegant and small. You will come with me now, he says. If you are a knife I can guide, I will use you. If you are an idol that draws worship, I will break you into pieces that cannot be adored. Peter nods. He's too tired to lie. You can try, he says, and it is not defiance. It is simple. They are escorted out of the Generatorum by a wedge of stormtroopers in black lacquered armor. The Sister Marshal walks at the point of the spear. The priest remains behind, laying hands on his machines, murmuring apologies and thanks. Mantis brushes the edge of his mind and leaves a stitch of calm like a thread in a torn sleeve. Rocket checks the drive status on his wrist deck and grimaces. She's burning, Pete, he says softly. Not bleeding out, but hot. The etherfold rig wants to sing in this sky. The wrong song. We keep using it like this, and we're building a bridge to somewhere we don't want to go. We will cross no bridges we did not build with intention, Drax says. It would be a joke once. Now it is a vow. On the balcony again, the wind has picked up. Soot rides it. The hive smells of battery acid and incense. The sky is a pool of smoke, underlit by green, paroxysms of lance fire puncturing it like stars that can bleed. Sister Marshal Agnes adjusts the relic flamer's feed line. A novice runs up to refill her tanks, eyes shining with terror and pride. Admiral, Holt says into the Vox, open a channel to the spire. I want to speak with your full command. We will need to reposition the void shield projectors and identify a kill zone. We will bait their primary monolith into a choke where its line of sight is limited to a single cardinal. Then we will saturate the air with heat and prayer and drop the spire on its crown. Approved, the Admiral says. The eastern curtain is already compromised. I can give you fire for 2 minutes before I must husband charges. The command feed blossoms on a hololithic projector that grinds itself into place with loving slowness. Tactical points light like candles. Sister Superiors, PDF colonels, and a Vox chaplain whose voice wears the city like a cloak speak, report, swear. Holt's hand moves in precise cuts. He assigns, prioritizes, kills with a finger, and saves with a breath. Peter watches and learns a grammar of this place. Efficiency steeped in reverence. Murder as duty. Mercy measured in seconds and meters. He nods when he should. He does not say the things his old self would have said. Gamora stands away from the hololith on the balcony's edge. She watches the monolith lines below, the shape of their advance. She whispers a name that is not a prayer and not quite a curse. Sautek. You knew them, Holt says without turning. He has ears for small truths. I killed them, Gamora says. Once, with others. It did not take. Few things do, Holt says. You will do it again. Mantis is quiet. She is listening to the city. People hum prayers. The sound is iron on stone. It tastes of smoke and tears. She closes her eyes and presses a palm against the balcony. They will not run, she says. They will die standing and be proud. It is heavy. Nebula joins her. The proud are easier to aim, she says. Sorrow bends, pride stands. Either can be used. You are cruel, Mantis murmurs. It is not an accusation. It is a map of a wound. Nebula's mouth thins. I am true, she says, and looks again at the sky. And we will need the truth. The monoliths are patterns. I can predict where this one will place its next anchors if we move the void shields here and here. She points at the hololith. We can force it to commit to the generatorum and the eastern artery, then cut it with crossfire. Holt studies the overlay. Do it, he says. Commander Helbrecht, he adds into the vox, addressing a man whose scars are his medals. Move your grenadiers to the east artery. Sister Marshal, I require 2 squads with melter charges on the lower transept. Admiral, when I call Litany of Fury, burn this spire to its bones. I relish your poetry, the Admiral replies in a tone that makes poetry a weapon. Command acknowledged. A siren sounds like a question with no right answer. The monolith steps into the generatorum square. It does not truly move. It is simply more present in more places. Greed made math. Its shadow is not shadow. It is the absence of fidelity in the world's texture. A wall buckles where the shadow touches it and becomes a plane that refuses to remember being brick. Positions, Holt says, and the city becomes a machine. Doorways spit troops. Balconies sprout barrels. The bridge Groot tightens like a muscle and draws itself out of the kill zone, leaves swaying in air dirty with holiness. Drax stands at the choke with 5 men who smell like oil and ash. He does not look at them. He looks at the place he will meet the green. Gamora crouches behind a column. She has a line. It is a good line. Peter sets his blasters to heavy and feels their weight like a judgment. Rocket has a detonator in each hand, and he is smiling with solemnity, which is new. The monolith opens an aperture, and the light inside is not light. It is a rule. It touches the edge of the choke, and the stone there decides it has always been dust. The first rank of grenadiers die beautifully, like saints. They do not scream. Their bodies are mistakes corrected. Mantis swallows bile. Groot steps forward and spreads, his bark plates glittering with soot and prayers scratched by children. Now, Holt says, Litany of Fury. The world answers. The Admiral's lances come down in braided lines, each a needle that sows fire into stone. Sister Marshal Agnes's flamer becomes a river. Nebula shuts down a shield projector, then powers another out of cycle to ricochet heat into the monolith's face. Rocket's charges invert a slab of street, so it becomes a mirror that only green can see. Peter's shots stitch along the monolith's lip like sutures. The monolith shudders. The rule inside it stutters. For a breath, it is vulnerable. Gamora is already moving. She hits the edge of the pit, plants on the lip, and throws a melter charge into the aperture with a motion that is pure, stripped of anything but function. Drax grabs the mirror slab and heaves, redirecting the green back at the source. Groot is a wall singing with pain and love. Mantis pushes steadiness like a balm into every hand that holds a trigger. The charge blooms. It does not explode. It solves a small piece of reality into heat and absence. The monolith's face tears like paper too old to fold. A thin keening fills the air, not shrill but vast, like a star complaining in the language of math. The monolith pulls itself back, less present. The shadow thins. Again, Holt says. His knuckles are white. Sister Marshal Agnes's face is pure exultation. The Admiral's voice is clipped, breathless with the act of feeding the city's veins with lightning. Capacitors at red line, one more salvo. They give it. The spire shakes. Statues crack. A hawk-nosed saint loses a fragment of his jaw and smiles differently. The monolith folds away in stages, not defeated, but denied. The green in the core dims. The immortals fall back with the calm of patient executioners, told they must come again tomorrow. The cheer that rises is ragged and brief. Holt cuts it with a hand. Hold your joy, he says without cruelty. We are not saved. We are deferred. He turns to Peter. You have bought seconds, he says. I will buy hours. Together, we might buy a day. Peter nods. He He feels the cost like sand under his tongue. The etherfold drive hums with wrong sympathy to the dying green. Rocket stares at the readings and says nothing, because he knows when not to hurt the people he loves with numbers. Inquisitor Holt shifts his weight. "You will attend a council," he says. "There will be praise for your utility and suspicion for your nature. There will be an argument or two, sharp ones. You will not mistake tolerance for affection." "We will not," Gamora says. It tastes familiar. They are marched through corridors that smell of hot metal and fat candles to a chamber where the city gathers its mind. Cogitators blink like slow thought. The Vox chaplain stands in a niche, muttering into a chain. Hollow emitters lay out the hive like a saint's body on a slab. The Admiral flickers into view on a brass-framed screen, his face a ruin of grace and tiredness. Sister priors, colonels, and magos whose skull is more choir organ than bone, crowd the table. Holt takes the head because it was made for him. He does not ask the guardians to sit. He does not offer water. He speaks in a voice that makes duty taste like bread. "They arrived in a storm and bled for us," he says plain. "They are alien and they wield forbidden arts. They have killed our enemies with precision. They will be used." Sister Marshal Agnes says nothing. She watches Gamora with an attention that is respect's cousin. The Magos churs, binary extremes like birds. A colonel with a bullet lodged near his spine grunts. "We need more bodies," he says. "Xenos bodies will do." Admiral Soran's voice cracks once. He ignores it. "My guns cannot keep up with the rate of emergence," he says. "The monoliths are nodes in a net. Kill one, the others change the shape and the net tightens. We must find the heart." Rocket's ears perk. "Hearts I can stab," he says, very calm. "Your net has a frequency. My ship runs on a different frequency that is a cousin if you squint. The overlap hurt me. It can hurt them. If we drag the etherfold rig close to the core of their field and make it sing wrong, we can jam their cohesion long enough to spike the heart." Holt looks at him with eyes that wish they did not have to consider trusting a small, unholy engineer. "You can do this." "I can try," Rocket says. "But the rig will eat itself, and it will chew on the empath." He glances at Mantis, because she has been feeding it calm, and calming this city is like wrapping a wildfire in silk. Mantis nods once. She has not stopped shaking. "I can do it," she says. "I can hold them. I can hold myself." Nebula overlays a map. "Heart is here," she says, pointing at a place under the eastern artery where the lines converge into a pit that is older than the first brick laid. "A tomb center. If we bring the ship to this maintenance shaft, we can drop the rig down on cables, pulse it, and run before the net counts us." Sister Marshal Agnes's face is set. "This will take us under the cathedral district," she says. "The relics will be exposed to blasphemy, but relics are made to be risked in war." She looks to Holt. "I will send 2 squads. "Adequate," Holt says. "Admiral, you will keep the sky standing. Magos, you will feed power to the east projectors and let the west falter to bait them. Quill, you will pray to whatever false star you carry that your machine obeys you. If you fail, I will expunge you from my city with as much mercy as my office permits." Peter meets his gaze. There is understanding there, not friendship. "Understood," he says. The council disbands not with ceremony but with purpose. Boots scrape, vox beads glow. Orders land like fresh snow and melt into motion. Outside, the spire hums as the void shields cycle and the air tastes of copper and old oaths. They step back onto the balcony to the sight of Mega Borealis bracing. The hive makes a different kind of sound now, a gathered, intentional murmur. Rocket rubs his wrist. "I need a clean conduit," he says, "and a lift, and about a mile of cable. and a saint who doesn't mind being used as a grounding rod. The Magos clicks and churs, and a servitor trundles forward bearing a spool that looks like a lost spinal cord. The Magos' mechadendrites stroke it like a beloved pet. "This cable is sanctified," the Magos says through a chorus of vox synths. "It has been dipped in oil and the tears of a martyr. It will carry your blasphemy." Rocket grins with a small, tired ferocity. "Perfect," he says. "Let's hang a bomb on a prayer and call it Tuesday." They march for the maintenance shaft at the East Artery, an entourage that is equal parts procession and hastily assembled sin. Drax carries a cable drum, as if it weighs less than memory. Gamora scouts ahead with Sister Marshal Agnes and her 2 squads, women in white armor whose footsteps are hymns. Nebula moves with the Magos, exchanging data glances like blows. Mantis walks with Groot, leaning her shoulder on his arm, grounding herself in bark and slow heart. The shaft mouth is a wound in the city's flank. It exhales air that smells like old secrets and rad-soured stone. Rocket sets his kit, fingers moving without wasted motion. He and Nebula mate alien conduit to sanctified cable. The Magos displeases the machine and then apologizes to it and is forgiven. Peter kneels, palms flat to the deck beside the winch assembly, feeling the ship's heart through the metal like a drummer finding the beat of a crowd. The Milano hovers above the shaft, her belly open. The etherfold rig hangs on winch cables like a mythic fish caught by stubborn gods. Rocket pats her. "Sing wrong, sweetheart," he says. "Sing wrong and break their teeth." Mantis steps to the edge and closes her eyes. She breathes in. She breathes out. The fear in the shaft rises like steam to meet her, not her fear. Theirs, many theirs, alive like a new organ. She sets her hands on the rail and lets it pass through her. Not to cleanse, not to hold forever, just to guide, redirect, uncoil pressure into purpose. "Hold," she whispers. The word goes down into the dark like a seed. The first Necron counterstrike hits before they can lower the rig halfway. Gauss beams scythe out of the dark. The winch frame shudders. A stormtrooper's arm is unmade from elbow to hand, and he watches the stump with mild surprise before he falls. Sister Marshal Agnes steps in front of the second beam and lets it harden on her chest plate. She spits fire back. Drax leans into the frame, muscles straining, holding the weight, while Rocket swears and reroutes the power to the dampers. Below, something larger than the Immortals climbs the shaft. A Triarch stalker, its limbs writing calligraphy in the air, its carapace a mirror for a dead god's face. Its disc weapon hums with certainty. Nebula flicks a glance, measures the likely arcs, and sets 3 bolts of blaster fire into the joints she knows she would hate to have. The stalker hesitates. Groot lunges, his arms growing mid-strike into hooks that bite, and he hauls. The stalker goes awkward for a heartbeat, just long enough for Gamora to plant a melter charge under its chin and step back as it forgets its shape. "Lower!" Rocket yells. "Now!" The rig drops. The cable sings. The Milano quivers, her guts loaded with tension. The etherfold sail unfurls inside its cage like a memory of an ocean made of equations. Rocket turns a dial that should not exist in this universe, and the rig sings a note that is ugly and perfect. The shaft vomits green. The note threads it, curls it, ties it into knots that make it twitch and lose its appetite. The monolithic field stammers. Across the hive, 3 nodes pulse and dim, pulse and dim, an arrhythmia in a machine's heart. "Again," Nebula says. "Hold it." Mantis's hands are white on the rail. She shakes. The mines below are a city's worth, and they all want to live, and they all want to be forgiven for wanting. She holds them like a chorus holds a long line. Her own heart stutters in sympathy with the rig. She forces it back into rhythm with soft, vicious insistence. The rig heats. Rocket watches a gauge creep into red and does not look away. 30 seconds, he says. Then she's done, and maybe us with her. Inquisitor Holt stands with his boots at the edge, eyes narrowed. He is weighing costs, and none of them are numbers. 20 will suffice, he says, not to Rocket, but to the city. Admiral, prepare the second litany. The second salvo strikes as the rig song reaches an ugly crescendo. The monolith at the Generatorum tries to unfold, and finds itself tied to a world that has changed its mind. It jerks, slips, tumbles in place, and the lance catches it in an angle where its rules cannot save it. It cracks like glass in a kiln. "Cut it," Rocket yells. Peter hits the release. The winch screams. The cable whips back and bites Drax's shoulder deep. He grunts. Groot grabs the line and bleeds sap as it burns his hands, easing the recoil. The rig slams into the Milano's belly, and the ship moans but holds. Down in the shaft, the light changes. It does not go out. It becomes thoughtful, then very, very angry. "Back," Holt says, already turning. "Back to the spire. We have killed a piece. The rest will come." They run. 'Tis not a rout. It is a measured fallback with dignity and speed. The stormtrooper, whose arm is gone, walks on steady legs, pale but uncomplaining, his stump sealed with a prayer and pressure. Sister Marshal Agnes sets her flamer on a lower feed and escorts him, her head up, eyes front. The Magos hums a happiness that sounds like a broken music box. On the balcony, the sky is a calculus of wrath. 3 new monoliths rise from the hive's scars. The Admiral's guns are hot enough to glow blue. The void shields flicker like eyelids on a dying god. The city sings louder, not because it is winning, but because it refuses to learn the shape of surrender. Peter stands beside Holt. He is streaked with grime and the clean black of something melted. He stares at the place where the rig song bent reality. "We can do it again," he says. "You can," Holt says. "And you will. And you will pay for it until you cannot pay any more. That is war." Mantis leans into Groot's side. He is a forest holding her up. She tastes pennies. She smells incense. She hears 100,000 prayers, and none of them are to her. Gamora wipes her blade. It glints once in the dirty light and goes dull. She looks at the Sister Marshal and inclines her head. Agnes returns the gesture with warrior grace. Nebula is already mapping paths to the next heart. The Magos strokes the cable. Drax tightens the bandage. Rocket threw on his shoulder without comment. Rocket stands with his hands on the Milano skin, feeling for cracks he cannot fix and planning to fix them anyway. The vox crackle resolves into the Admiral's voice, half a snarl, half a plea. "We bought a breath," he says. "Make it count." Inquisitor Holt turns to the Guardians, cloak moving like a shadow that still remembers what light is. "We have our plan," he says. "We will dirty our hands together, and then, if we live, I will make you explain yourselves." Peter's mouth curves. Not a smile, not quite. "We'll be here," he says, and means it. The third monolith opens. The sky answers. The city braces. The day is not over. They step forward as one more machine, improvised, unlikely, necessary. And the hive's heart, bruised but beating, answers them with the oldest word it knows: hold. The last of the lance sparks fall like hard rain as the Admiralty channels close and the spire steadies on its wounded footings. Holt gives the order with a finger. The Guardians move before the echoes cool. Their route is a spiral through the hive's throat to a place where 4 arterial hab bridges meet above a service canyon. There, the monolith's lines have not yet written the ground into obedience. Gamora arrays the melter charges herself. She places them with a dancer's economy, hands sure, eyes measuring how weight becomes leverage. Sister Marshal Agnes watches in silence, the judgment in her face no longer hostile, only precise. "You cut clean," Agnes says at last. Gamora nods without looking. "I learned to make every cut count," she replies, "and means more than metal." Rocket kneels in the dirt and opens the etherfold node he stripped from the Milano. It is a smaller sibling to the rig, angry at being alone. He wires it into the sanctified cable like grafting profanity onto a hymn. Nebula mirrors him with a second node tuned against the first. The phase relationship a knife's edge. "We anchor their shadow between our notes," Rocket murmurs. When the node sings, the monolith flinches and the charges speak. Drax stands over the work with his quiet watchman's stillness. He counts the breaths of the grenadiers at the choke point. He nods at a child helping a tech priest carry a tool. The child nods back like this is a normal thing to do on such a day. Mantis steadies herself with both palms on the railing, sending her breath down the hive's spine, gathering panic like threads and tying them to stubbornness. Holt marks the kill box with a servo skull's laser pointer, speaking to the Admiral in clipped prayer. 2 salvos on Credo, 1 on Alea. "Fall the western shield for 7 seconds on my mark. We will starve it of lines of sight." Soren's reply is oxygen and iron. "Understood. I will make the world smaller for your enemy." The monolith enters the intersection without moving. Its face is a black-green plane that rejects light. Its shadow fails to behave. Buildings hold their shape because they are stubborn, not because reality agrees. Scarabs scurry along the edges of prayer-etched steel and obediently die in Agnes's flame. Peter stands at the trigger of the mirrored nodes with his fingers pale and negative. "Now," Nebula breathes. "Now," Rocket echoes. The nodes light like 2 wrong stars. Their songs braid and snarl. The monolith's face shivers, as if it remembers once becoming. Gamora's charges hum. Agnes counts down without counting. "Emperor witness," she says, and steps her people back. The charges solve the bridge's pins into fire. Stone remembers it is aggregate and falls apart like language under stress. The monolith, denied its neat angles, list tips into the service canyon. Holt's mark speaks into Soren's guns. The sky needles a precise seam along the monolith's lip, lancing where it cannot normalize. It breaks without drama, simply shedding presence in clean, ugly sheets that dissipate into a smell like old cold. The cheer rises, clipped short by habit. Agnes lowers her flamer. Her jaw works once in a nervous prayer she would deny. Controlled, the Admiral notes in the Vox, approval wrapped in fatigue. Collateral contained to 3 habs, 2 rail lines. The canyon will be a scar, but it will hold water. Peter wipes grit from his brow with the back of his wrist. The node in front of him ticks down its heat into a hiss that sounds like exhaustion. "We can replicate," Nebula says. Eyes already searching for the next geometry. But each time we teach them, they learn us. Holt answers without praise or complaint. "Then we move faster than their learning curve," he says. He turns on his heel, cloak snapping. "Council of War. We will formalize the next hour's sacrilege." They climb into a chamber that has been a chapel to gears for 100 years. Planes of brass service tables, scratched by compasses and prayer knives. The Muggles shuffles in with mecha dendrites full of incense. Admiral Soren's face blooms on a hollow projector with the grain of old glass. Holt speaks first because he must. The city stands by stubbornness and blasphemy. We have an improvised method to deny nodes locally. We need a strategic axis. He gestures, and the hive skeleton flares to life. Here, here, here. These arteries feed Mega Borealis's heart. If we hold 2, we can lose 1 and still live. If we lose 2, the third becomes a noose. Agnes plants her relic flamer on the table like a gavel. "We hold them all," she says, tone flat. not defiant. We hold them, or we die on them. Nebula points with 2 fingers. We hold 2, bleed the 3rd, and bleed them with it, she says. Facts, not philosophy. Evacuations along the noose line to thicken population on the 2 we keep. Denser faith, more bodies that can carry munitions. Your culture's logic says more voices make stronger prayer. I say more hands make more work. A colonel with a voice like a stone grinder objects. Moving that many souls in this weather creates crush and panic. Mantis answers without asking permission. Panic can be bundled and fed into courage if you give it a frame, she says softly. If you give them words to hold, and you do not lie. Evacuations waste guns, another officer snaps. Evacuations save children, Peter says, very calm. Children are not guns. They are the reasons to have guns. The room stills. Agnes regards him with a soldier's patience. We do not have the luxury to pull back, she says. Duty is a place, not a feeling. They will not break us in place if we do not move. Holt cuts the tension before it becomes doctrine ossified. Mercy and survival do not war by necessity, he says. We will evacuate the noose line in formation behind a screen of steel. Grenadiers, sisters, and these allies will hold the flanks and the head. Magos, you will pulse the vox with a single clear litany to prevent contradictory orders. Admiral, you will play the sky like an organ and give us breath when we must realign the sainted herd. Soren nods. Breath's available, he says, but my lungs are finite. Rocket sets a schematic on the table with dirty paws. While you shepherd, I cut. We hang 3 more nodes as bait and blades. We break 2 more monoliths here and here. We cannot be everywhere, that's math. But we can be loud in the right places, and loud hurts them. The Magos churs approval and feeds the chamber a data spool with green ink. We have identified a sub-harmonic nested in the enemy's field. The machine priest sings through Vox synth. It resonates with Blackstone. It corrodes psychogenic feedback. Your empath's cortex will suffer if she continues to load share. Mantis's hand shakes. She places it flat on the brass until it stops. I will keep breathing, she says. I will keep the breathing steady. Agnes looks like the kind of tire that can carry a city. Then we go, she says, and the council dissolves the way good councils do, into motion, into labor, into duty. They march with the evacuation head, flanked by white armor and black lacquer, past lines of people carrying relics and tools and small animals and bigger grief. A woman walks with a cage of pigeons, and a boy holds a cogitator more carefully than bread. Groot bends to let 3 children walk under his arms as if he is a gate. Drax lifts a fallen beam and sets it aside without ceremony. Scarabs flick along the gutter line and die under sanctified boots. A Necron warrior appears at the mouth of a maintenance tunnel. Its face is the idea of a skull, bored with itself. Gamora spends exactly 1 strike to remove its head, and Agnes incinerates the corpse until even the oils of its joints cancel themselves. They reach the first choke. Holt raises his hand. The screens mounted on shrines flicker and show the Admiral's gaunt face. Litany of passage, Soren says, voice like winter sun. Walk, do not run. Sing, do not shout. Parents watch children. Men watch the blind. Sisters watch the line. Walk. They walk. The hymn is a hum, a low thing that does not break. Mantis takes it in like a yoke and finds it lighter than panic. From the east, the air changes. It is the kind of change a hunter feels in his teeth before he sees the predator. Nebulas feed, spikes. Rocket's whiskers lift. The Magos' cants slip into agitation. Holt glances left, and his eyes, hard always, go harder. A shape steps out of the monolith's influence, as if it was buried in a piece of math, and now decides to be history. It is taller than a man, robed in plates that bend light wrong, a staff in its hand that hums with calendar wounds. Its head is a shard of stars wired into a skull cage. The air around it tastes of stale time. Holt's voice is knife clean. Cryptek, Chronomancer cast. Agnes raises her flamer and then lowers it by a fraction. Her eyes narrow. The enemy sends a priest. The Cryptek does not hurry. It tilts its head in a motion like condescension encoded into geometry. A disc on its chest opens like an eye, revealing a pocket of trapped space in which flicker a dozen test images, faces of those who will die if the wrong choice is made, or the right one, shown out of sequence. Peter feels his blasters grow heavier as if the moment thickens around them. Rocket curses under his breath at a pitch too low for anyone but Nebula to truly hear. Mantis staggers. She steadies on Groot and tastes dust older than the city's founding stone. The Cryptek gestures with the staff. A wave of air spreads that is not air, more like a memory of air, and men within its reach slow into statues for 3 heartbeats, then resume with a hiccup of lost life. A sister's shot goes wide because she fires in an instant that is not present. Agnes swears in a language that predates her order and bares her teeth. They open fire with discipline, not rage. Beams slam into the Cryptek's phase geometry and come away like arguments that were never heard. Holt snaps a sign and a symbol burns in the air before him. A ward that speaks to any warp lingering the Necrons once feared. It doesn't deter. It punctuates. The Cryptek lifts the staff and points it at the etherfold node on Rocket's back. The node whines like a bell, a mile away. Rocket feels the harmonic shift toward a silence that is not absence, but denial. He bares his teeth and spins a dial with his thumb, forcing the node to sing off key. The staff trembles once, then reasserts its command. The node's tone breaks, a hairline crack in its heart. Mantis gasps. The Cryptek is not a mind in a way she can touch. It is a set of insistences. But the field it controls drags time like a net through her. Her sense for rhythms, the breaths, the marching, the pulses she can calm, becomes noise. She bites her lip until she tastes blood and swallows the noise. Holt does not blink. "Admiral, recitation knife of dawn on my mark," he says. "Sister Marshall, hold the core hymn. Nebula, left flank at 2 meters. You will shear the staff when he commits. Quill, you will shoot the eye when it opens. It will open. Everything that is proud shows its weakness once to be admired. The evacuation flows around the fight like water finds new paths. Drax steps into the line of the Cryptek's sight and simply refuses to be a man who gives ground. He takes the wave of slowness full in the chest and lets it move through him. Muscles locked in the angles he chose seconds before. When it passes, he moves again. The same speed, the same measure. Stubbornness becomes a weapon. The Cryptek tilts its head again. It raises the staff. The disc on its chest opens wider, and something tenses in the world's fabric as if about to snap back. Holt's hand cuts down. Now. The sky answers. Not a wide lance, but a line-thin thread of sun. A needle that passes through a keyhole that Nebula made by firing 3 precise shots into a patch of air until its refractive lies admitted there was a path. The thread strikes the staff's head. It does not shatter, because Necron work seldom does. It stutters, loses amplitude, remembers a different era. Gamora moves. Her knife comes up in a line that has no style because style wastes inches. She slides under the staff's recovery and drives that same unadorned line toward the disc eye. The Cryptek turns time between her and the point into gelatin. Her blade enters the gelatin, and she insists on it being air. It becomes half air, half gel. She gets a hand's breadth of depth before the world's stubbornness equals hers. Peter's shots follow her blade. not aiming for the eye, but for the hinges that open it. Two flashes like distant stars. The hinge fails, the eye flares. Rocket whips a disc at the cryptech's ankle. It clamps and detonates inward, not outward, creating a pocket of low pressure that yanks the foot off true and breaks a circuit line inside the leg. The cryptech withdraws 3 steps, not by moving, but by deciding those steps already happened. It regards them the way a monument regards weather, as evidence that time exists but has poor manners. Then it lifts the staff and draws a tight circle in the air. The circle seals like ice. A smell like ozone plus old libraries floods the bridge. Words appear in the air, not in any language, but in the framework of language itself. For a heartbeat, Peter forgets the names of everyone he loves. Mantis screams softly, a small sound like a teacup cracking. Agnes roars a hymn. Holt bites words in high Gothic with blood on his tongue that burn the not words away. The cryptech lowers the staff. It is tested. It has learned. It leans into the shadow of a reassembling warrior phalanx and permits the Necron line to advance while it calibrates a more precise injury. Holt does not order a chase. He sets his people, hot with anger, back into the business of getting the vulnerable across the choke. Power scaling interlude. Inquisitor Holt dictates into his Vox cassette without ornament. The enemy deploys a Chronomancer-class cryptech. Its Aeon Stave imposes temporal drag that detunes alien etherfold harmonics and induces empathic arrhythmia in psi-sensitives. A chest-mounted Tesseract aperture projects causality glitches, brief erasures of nominative memory and muscle cadence. Its phase armor dilates around peak energy spikes. Narrow threads of lance fire through keyed refraction can puncture. Morale counter is doctrine and measured song. Technological counters require mirrored phase and point timing. The evacuation reaches the cathedral district. The relic lines gleam in candlelight and smoke. The Vox chaplain stands on a plinth and turns his face into a loudspeaker for hope. Children stare at Groot like a saint carved from living wood. Agnes moves through her sisters like a current through wires and keeps them from boiling over. Holt calls a pause, because pauses are part of movement in a city this tight. He meets Peter's eye across a table that is a baptismal font covered with maps. "You saw how it hurt you," he says, not unkind. "You will adjust or you will die. I cannot bleed for you again." Peter nods. His hands are steady. "We rekey the notes," he says. "We make them less dependent on a perfect song and more like a drum beaten by people who refuse to stop." Rocket grunts approval, and his paws are already filthy with the new arrangement. Nebula watches Mantis for longer than she pretends to. Mantis smiles with lips and not eyes. "I'm not broken," she says. "I'm tired." Agnes stands at the font. Flamer slung, helmet off. Her hair is damp with vapor. She studies Peter as if he were a weapon she might learn to field strip. "Your mercy is tactile," she says. "You touch it. You move it around. You set it down carefully. It is competent." Peter understands this is praise in her language. "Your duty is heavy," he replies. "You carry it the way the hive carries its own roofs." The Admiral's voice drills into the respite and splits it open. All commands. New signature detected. Green, but colder. Vectoring from the North Transit wells. Function unknown. It walks with the cryptech's shadow, but casts none of its own. The Magos emits a burst of machine fear and clamps down on it. Holt's face goes flat the way a blade goes flat before the swing. "Define," he says. "Annul," the Magos sings, voice pitch broken. Blackstone dense and hungry. Perhaps a pariah engine. Perhaps worse. Its field will strip your empath to bone and turn your wards inside out. It will not respect your songs. It will not hate them. It will simply not hear. Agnes's jaw tightens. We have trained for blanks in human shape. We have not trained for an ancient void given legs. Nebula overlays projected paths and they look like cracks in glass. Rocket taps the nodes with 2 quick fingers. If it eats harmonics, we switch from song to hammer, he says. EMP coupled with physical demolition. I can build nails big enough to hurt a god if you give me a forge. Holt nods once, a sparing ration of trust. We will give you a forge made of guilt and time, he says, and we will protect your hands while you build. They make a forge in the cathedral's undercrypt, between reliquaries and old battery racks. Rocket cannibalizes 6 servo skulls and a sun lamp and a cache of melter charges meant for siege doors. Nebula requisitions a plate of ferrocrete and etches a circuit into it with a sister's knife. The Magos consecrates the blasphemy with machine oil in the sign of a gear. Peter winds copper like rosaries around ceramic cores until his fingers ache. Mantis sits between 2 saints and breathes. She cannot reach the null that is coming. Her senses slip off its edges like rain off onyx. So she turns inward and makes her own cadence clean. She tunes herself to the hive not to control it, but to endure it. A swimmer matching a river's rhythm to survive the crossing. Agnes kneels and prays in a voice that does not tremble. Emperor, she murmurs, I am your hand, cut or whole. I am your fire, low or high. Let me burn where you need me. Let me not burn where it would be waste. Drax stands near and says nothing, because there are some prayers that need silence to guard them. The null arrives with no fanfare. The lights dim, not because power drops, but because the air forgets how to carry light properly. The hymn flinches. People feel the pressure that is the absence of pressure and go quiet, not frightened, not calm, simply vacant around the edges. It is a construct shaped like a man that decided to be a shrine to subtraction. Its surfaces drink attention. Black stone plates stack in an elegance that no human hand could have taught stone. At its heart, a green point spins without casting light. The cryptek paces beside it like a courtier beside a cruel prince. Agnes rises. Holt raises his staff. Peter shoulders the assembly Rocket built, a heavy nail of coil-wrapped intent meant to drive into the null and wring it like a bone. Rocket clamps the trigger frame onto Peter's forearm and meets his eyes. You get one, he says. Maybe 2. After that, it eats the charge and the charge eats you. Nebula takes position to punch angles. Drax sets his feet like a statue that chose to fight. Groot flexes bark and grows a lattice over Mantis's head like a canopy that remembers forests. The null walks forward. Its field spreads, and saints on the walls lose their faces not by damage, but by indifference. Holt's wards fold like paper in water. Mantis drops her hands and feels the city's hum fall away like a blanket pulled off in winter. She is naked to silence. Peter breathes once, in the rhythm he learned from men who taught him how to live with other people's fear. He steps left to draw the null's center toward him and away from the relic-laden bench where 3 priests crouch. The cryptek clocks him and flicks the staff. The ground right under Peter remembers being older and tries to climb back into the past. Agnes fires on the move. Her flamer is a sacrament that even silence cannot eat quickly. The null does not flinch. It cannot. It is the refusal to react. The flame hits and spreads around the field, the way oil beads on frozen water. Holt chants a litany that bites his throat and bleeds. The words are beautiful and entirely unused. Now, Rocket says, too quiet to be brave, just loud enough to be heard. Peter raises the nail and depresses the frame. The coil screams. The nail leaps like a thrown thunderhead and kisses the null in the sternum. For a fraction of a second, reality has to decide whether it respects absence more than protest. The coil's pulse pushes choice into the field. The null shudders. The green point flickers. The black stone plates ring. a sound so beautiful that half the people present weep because the universe remembered music in a place built to refuse it. Nebula takes that window and fires into the joints that briefly behave like joints instead of ideals. The shots dig a finger's width. Drax steps and slams his shoulder into the null with the inexorable force of a man who has carried a coffin alone. It moves an inch. That inch is victory. The cryptech tries to paste a memory of failure over the moment like a correction. Holt answers with a knife of unsanctioned warp drawn and slain in the same heartbeat. Illegal, necessary, precise. Agnes steps in and, very simply, touches the null's chest with the muzzle of her relic. Her flamer speaks low and focused, a whisper of concentrated annihilation that even indifference has to measure. The null recovers. It recovers like math does when you stop erasing it. It swallows the rest of the flame and eats the edge of Holt's last litany and finds the tune it was born not to hear. Peter lifts the second nail. He feels the frame's heat bite his palm through the glove. He looks at Mantis. She is looking at him and not at the thing that is killing her profession by existing. She nods once. Her eyes are clear. He fires. The second nail buries deeper because the first taught the field to think about resistance, and thinking takes time, and time is pain in a fight with these machines. The green point stutters again and dims to a coal. Agnes drops to one knee and pours a line of fire into the wound like a scribe drawing a final stroke in a holy name. The null retreats, not backwards, but by deciding it is already further away. It carries absence with it. The cryptech lowers the staff slightly, acknowledging the data that pain has provided. The field relaxes a fraction. Light returns to carrying itself. People breathe with interest again. Holt doesn't smile. They are probing, he says. They will come again with the probe sharpened. He looks at Peter. You stood between that and what you chose to protect. I count that as doctrine worth entertaining. Agnes's shoulders drop by a finger's breadth. Your mercy has a spine, she says, not entirely grudging. 'Tis not soft. Rocket slides down the wall until he sits on a prayer-carved bench. His paws shake, whether with fatigue or from the memory of the coil scream even he cannot tell. Nebula pulls a char mark off her own forearm with a knife and flicks it away, her expression unreadable. Drax rewraps his shoulder with a strip of sister spare cloth that smells of oil and candle smoke. Groot bends his head so Mantis can lean her forehead to his bark and breathe the forest that isn't there. The Admiral's face returns, more gaunt, somehow larger. Orbital capacitors below 40%. He reports in the tone of a man reading off names of the dead. 2 more salvos at full. After that, flechette strikes and harsh language. Holt nods, accepting the book's next page. Then we must act with the assumption that the sky is finite, he says. He turns to the Guardians. We've won 2 discrete engagements. That satisfies honor to hold a council without shouting. Sit. They sit on crates and on the floor, and on the edge of the font. Agnes stands because it is her way. The Margos hovers, cables attentive. The Vox chaplain listens, head bent, unjudging, preparing the right words to give the wrong day to people who will still need to sleep. Mercy versus survival, Holt says, plain. It is the same axis as obedience versus adaptation. My city knows how to die well. I would have it live poorly if living yields a future in which it can repent for the compromises of today. Agnes does not flinch from the thought. Mercy that breaks formation kills more later, she says. But mercy that orders the line, mercy that directs the children to the right door while the guns hold. This is not softness. This is logistics of the soul. Nebula speaks in data, not feelings. Evacuation vectors will continue to intersect with the enemy's reassembly paths. We can adjust our songs and our shots. We cannot adjust that their learning curve is steeper than ours. Therefore, we must change the problem. We must strike at the crypt at the city's root. We must go down. Rocket's ears flick. The heart, he says. We stabbed at a ventricle. The aorta still pumps. Drax nods slow. Down is where fear goes when it has weight. We will follow it. Peter looks at Mantis. Her braid is coming apart. She twists it back together with irritated grace. I can hold enough fear to keep the path clear, she says. I cannot hold the null, but I can teach our breathing to remain steady when it takes our rhythm away. Holt decides. He does not pretend he is consulting a higher authority. The higher authority is busy listening to a billion such pleas and expects its servants to use the minds it gave them. We will strike below, he says. You will lead. Sister Marshal Agnes and 2 squads will accompany. The Margos will provide keys. The Admiral will hold the sky with spit and recitation. I will manage the city that remains, because Cho's duty has to look like trust. Agnes bows her head a measure. The Emperor sees you, she says. I will protect your knife hand while it does its work. The alarm cuts the council in half. It is the dry cough of cogitators touching a frequency they were not built to carry. The Vox officer at the archway pinwheels with fear and discipline. Inquisitor, he says. The enemy's smarter priest, the chronomancer. He is in the catacombs already. He walks in the old cathedra. He touches the bones. Holt's face becomes blank marble. We do not let thieves measure our dead, he says. He points to Agnes. Hold the cathedral. He points to Peter. Go under. If they breach my house and smell my foundations, I want their noses broken by the time they look up. They move as if born to this order. Agnes pivots her squads out in ripples. The Margos hands Nebula a gear-shaped token that hums when turned by a human rather than a servitor. This opens the city's throat, the priest croons. Do not lose it. It has the names of 5 saints scratched on the back. Rocket shoulders a fresh coil nail assembly that looks like a weapon from a myth that never described its own shape. Drax tests the weight of a seismic charge like a man hefting a truth. Groot digs his roots into the cracks between cathedral stones and pulls water until his bark shines. Mantis touches Holt's forearm, the smallest daring, and whispers, "You hold so much grief so well." Holt meets her eyes for a heartbeat. He inclines his head so slightly, it could be a trick of light. "I had tutors," he says. The catacombs receive them like a swallowed breath. The air is colder. The hum of the city thins. Incense clings to bones arranged in arches whose geometry was meant to remind men of their own temporary shapes. Nebula's token vibrates against her palm as they pass old logs. The Magos' mapping ghosts flicker in her eye. The cryptech's work marks the walls like frost. Symbols not meant for eyes flicker in the periphery, polite, poisonous. Mantis refuses to read them with either mind or heart. She shapes a small, steady beat in her chest and invites the others to match it without words. They find the old cathedra stripped of its banners and hung instead with thin cables of green light that do not move but are always in a different place when you look back. The cryptech stands where bishops used to stand and performs surgery on the memory of stone. It does not turn when they enter. It knew they would come. It has kept proper time. They do not announce themselves either. Rocket sets the coil nail down and braces it with a saint's femur. He takes the blasphemy into his hands and is not ashamed. Peter draws a breath that matches Mantis's beat. Gamora rolls her shoulders and shortens the distance between her and whatever she has to cut. Drax sets the seismic charge at the cathedra's foundation and primes it to sing down instead of up. The cryptech raises its staff an inch, a professional saying to other professionals, "Ah, Holt is not here to give litanies. Agnes is not here to anchor with fire. Sorani's whisper and distance. It is the 5 of them and the enemy priest and a city's secret heart quivering under their boots. Nebula glances at Peter. He nods once. She twists the gear token and the cathedra's underseal opens a handwidth, exhaling air that smells like first dust. The cryptech brings its staff down. The wave that comes is not time slowed but sequence rearranged. Peter is in front, then behind, then at the side. He chose not to be, because choice is an offense the enemy tries to correct. He moves anyway. Groove by groove, muscle insists on path. Mantis holds the beat steady enough that when the wave reaches her, it finds a pattern and, bored, moves past. Gamora does not chase the staff. She stabs the moment right before it moves. The staff still moves, but slower, and the edge of its head kisses stone instead of bone. Drax eats the edge of a retimed blow and takes it with his shoulder, which was already broken in another lifetime. Groot extends a root from his palm and anchors the coil nail where it wants to wander into a different second. Rocket throws the switch. The coil sings in a language that refuses to be elegant. The cryptech flares its disc eye, attempting to erase the song with a bracket of non-meaning. Nebula fires into the hinge she learned with her knife earlier. The disc slows opening by a heartbeat that costs it everything. The nail slams the air a foot in front of the cryptech and forces the world to choose hearing over denial again. The staff stutters. The Eon head hums dissonance. The cryptech's phase geometry blurs between two solutions and, for that span, is neither. Gamora cuts a piece that did not exist until the coil demanded it become extant. She takes it anyway. The cryptech sidesteps in 3 directions at once and reappears with its hand extended, palm out like a blessing. Symbols hang between palm and air. These do not erase words. They erase motive. For one thin scream of a second, Peter doesn't know why he is here. Then the beat returns and tells him, because we do not let cities die alone. He moves. He puts his shoulder into the nail like a man driving something heavy into something heavier. The coil's heart cracks. The charge bleeds. It gives him one more surge because he asked, and because things break better under honest load. The pulse turns the cryptech's shadow inside out. Drax's seismic charge answers with a bass note that puts a second crack in the air under the cathedra, directed toward the tomb roads the monoliths were climbing. The cryptech withdraws for the second time in this act, because pride that refuses to learn dies and pride that learns chooses when to leave. It calculates that this skirmish is not worth a coil nail and a stubborn 5. It lifts the staff and folds itself along a vector that existed only as an idea. It is gone. Its work remains but interrupted, and the interruption is a wound in the enemy's schedule. Peter sags. Rocket catches the coil before it drops and cradles it like a hurt thing. Nebula stares at the crack in the underseal and listens to how the city speaks through it. Mantis sits down on the floor and cries without sound, because the null is still out there and will come back, and her craft has no purchase on it. Groot crouches behind her and builds a grove with his shadow. Peter reaches across the small space and takes Mantis's hand. It is a precise gesture, human, ordinary. We keep moving, he says. We keep the breathing steady. Up above, the Admiral gives the last full salvo to a sky that now knows exactly what it will miss when the guns go dull. Holt stands on the spire and watches the horizon for signs that the enemy will risk its delay for a taste of triumph. Agnes holds a barricade and murmurs to a dying soldier about his children, guessing their names and getting one right, which is enough. The 5 climb back toward light. They do not speak much. The city's heart beats in the crack they made. It is not a victory song. It is the sound of something deciding it wants to stay a city for another hour. They emerge into a nave where evacuees rest against pillars with the faces of saints. The hymn has slowed. It has not stopped. Holt meets them at the threshold with soot on his cheek like a mark any order would honor. They bled, he says. You made them choose to leave a place they wanted to violate. That is a victory that will read as a footnote in a book that does not lie. Peter nods. He does not know what to do with praise here, so he sets it down next to the pile of spent capacitors and used vows. Rocket leans on the font and stares up at the ceiling as if counting cracks. Nebula passes the gear token back to the Magos, who takes it with reverent greed. Drax drinks water like a sacrament. Mantis rubs her eyes and they are red, but they are clear. The sky shifts tone, losing the blue under the smoke and taking on the flat of steel left out in winter. The Admiral's voice is an apology before it is words. Capacitors exhausted, he says. Secondary fire protocols only. The enemy knows. Holt does not sigh. He has no time to waste on meaningful exhalations. Then we make them pay in stairs and corners, he says. We force them to be bored. We force them to be brave. We make them bleed time. Agnes steps beside him and unlatches the spare promethium flask from her belt to hand to Rocket. For your nails, she says, nearly smiling, if you will forge again. Rocket takes it with a short bow, an odd, courtly shape on a small, filthy engineer. I will, he says, and I will make them uglier. Peter raises his head and looks out over a city built to hold against everything but eternity. He tastes metal and incense. He hears the hum. He feels the etherfold rig in the Milano still hot, still whispering to a geometry that wants his ship to sing a different song. He thinks of children who hold cogitators or pigeons, of men who have bullet-lodged spines and still stand, of women who call fire a prayer. Next, he says, we go next. The hymn moves on. The city follows. The enemy adjusts. The day narrows to a bright, burning point, and they aim everything they have at it, because to do anything else would be treason against the living. The Spire's command chamber breathes like a bellows in the minutes after the capacitors die. Inquisitor Holt sets his staff on the table and pins the hive's bones with a look. He does not raise his voice. The Saltec deployment map just rewrote itself, he says. 3 emergent tomb roads braid under the cathedral district. They are not trying to overrun Mega Borealis. They are trying to pin it long enough to reassert sovereignty over the orbital harbors and the Sainted Rail. Then, they will turn the city into a calibration piece. Admiral Soran's face on the hollow is thin as wire. Standard counters fail because their reassembly rate scales with our munition economy, he says. For every corridor we seal with heat, 2 more draw breath through the cracks. My guns cannot teach infinity to be finite. He looks like a man carving books into bullets. Nebula overlays cold light on brass. Lancefire has trained them. The coil nails taught them to add silence resistance in vector bands. They are learning our rhythm. We must change what counts as rhythm. We go under, Rocket says, fraying cables into a braid with fingers that have not stopped since dawn. Deeper than the cathedra, we find their scheduler, the logic that whispers go, fold, rise, and we break its jaw. Above ground becomes a distraction. Below ground ends the conversation. Sister Marshal Agnes's gauntlet scrapes the flamer's casing. My sisters can hold the upper galleries and keep the people moving, she says. We will burn in place. But if this is a knife fight for the city's soul, the knife must go where souls are measured. Her eyes move to Peter. Your mercy has work. Holt nods. The enemy's primary goal is the rail spines, he says, tapping the hive's eastern and northern arteries. Hold those, we still matter. Lose both, we become a siege lesson. Standard counters fail because their mathematics are older than our factories, so we give them an insult they have not accounted for. He lifts the staff, makes the sign of the Inquisition in the air, then lowers it like a gavel. We strike their scheduler. They descend through a maintenance throat under the cathedral transepts with the city's hum in their lungs. Incense gives way to cold stone and old dust. The Magos' mapping ghosts flicker and dim as interference climbs. Mantis moves with hands against the wall, taking the hive's breath and giving it a rhythm the enemy cannot erase easily. Rocket carries a rebuilt coil nail and a satchel of ugly improvisations. Nebula keeps the gear token turning in her palm. Drax bears the seismic charge like a sacrament. Gamora walks point, her step light, her eyes measuring darkness in yards. The tunnel opens into a foundry of bells that has not rung since a war no one writes ballads about. Bronze mouths hang mute in rows. A whisper runs through them without moving air. At the far end, inside a prickle of wrong geometries, the cryptek waits, aeon stave planted, disc eye closed to a slit. Its presence makes the bells remember eras and then forget them. It lifts its staff a fraction. The motion, a disdain that survived the death of a star. It knows we are the problem, Nebula murmurs, not to warn but to steady her own hands. Agnes signals a spread with 2 fingers. Holt sets his wards, hexagrammats burning faint on the floor like drawn breath. No speeches, he says. Cut. They move. Peter steps left to open Nebula's angle. Gamora rolls under a bronze lip and comes up inside a fence of quiet air. Rocket throws a disc. It bites the floor, flashes, and flips a patch of gravity. Drax plants the seismic charge against the bell frame and primes it to sing down, not out. Groot grows a shoulder lattice over Mantis and the bells for when the Aeon wave comes. The cryptek draws a small circle in front of its face. The circle seals. Time in that circle is rude to people. The Aeon stave rises, head humming with a note that might be grief if grief was a number. The wave hits them not as slowness, but as missequence. Peter is where he was not. Gamora's blade meets an edge a moment too early. Rocket's disc detonates with the right physics and the wrong order. Peter leans into the wrongness the way a diver leans into current. His hands find their work. He fires not at the cryptek but at hinges and brackets in its field. The hinge of the eye disc, the mount of the staff haft, the 2 points where phase geometry converges into something foolish enough to admit a name. The shots land on time because he refuses to let time decide their names. Gamora finds a gap where insistence gives her inches. She spends them well. She cuts the line that feeds the staff's head in 2 places and earns a bright scream in her arm where reality flickers and bites. Drax shoulders a bell stand, half out of history, and throws it into the circle, so that the circle must decide to be a circle for an object that tells stories about being a bell. The cryptek extends its offhand. The disc eye opens wider. Symbols hang between palm and skull cage, letters that never learned phonetics. Peter feels a coolness move through his chest and take a handful of names. The inside of nowhere, the feel of the bar rail under his palm while Yondu laughed. The exact way the Milano's cockpit smells after a long repair. That constellation winks. He knows it existed. He cannot touch it. He stumbles. Mantis lurches with him. She is not inside the cryptek's mind, but the field's changes run through bodies. She catches his shock like a shard. She steadies the beat, voice too soft to be heard, deeper than hearing. In, she says. Out. Hold. Groot's lattice cinches down as a Gauss line sighs the bells and fills the air with shards of ages. The cryptek moves. It is elegance distilled. The Aeon stave arcs like a clock hand that kills. Holt meets it with his staff, hex wards flaring and failing in ordered sequence. The failure is planned, and their dying bites the stave's rhythm. Agnes steps into the wash with flame, on low and precise, keeping the phalanx behind the priest from forming a box around the jewel. The cryptek rakes the ion stave across Peter's chest. It does not touch him physically. It writes a cancellation through him, from sternum to spine, a subtraction so neat it burns cold. Peter gasps. His knees hit the foundry floor. The Milano's ether-fold sail shrieks in the belly of the ship above, far away, but close enough in the link he wears like a stitched badge. Rocket shouts a wordless denial and slams the nail's power frame into life. The coil screams. The nail leaps, trails heat, kisses the Eon field with an argument too unpretty to ignore. The cryptek pivots. What passes for surprise, a change in the exact tilt of its skull cage. Nebula fires into the hinge of the disc, while it is thinking about ugliness. The disc flutters. Drax steps in and plants his boot on the cryptek's ankle with all the gravity of a man who carried death for a living and is tired of it. The ankle moves an inch wrong, and that inch opens something no chronomancer wanted open. The Eon Staff drops. It does not clatter. It lands in a moment out of sequence and leaves a frost pattern across the bell ledge where it rests. Gamora goes for the wrist. The blade slides between plates and makes sparks that sound like a failing calendar. The cryptek answers with the hand that holds nothing. The air between fingers and target thickens into symbols that erase reasons. Peter's will stutters like a man's heart at the edge of hypothermia. He sees Nowhere's spine splitting. He hears Saran reading the last salvo as if saying grace. He feels Mantis's pulse counting him back toward himself. The cryptek sidles into his ear. No voice, just proposition. Stabilize the breach using your sail against our anchor, and we will arrest the city into safety. We will keep every soul. We will seal Nowhere's wound. Give us your drive. Give us your ship. Keep your family. All you must trade is the world. The offer is clean. The mathematics cruel and elegant. It loves him enough to take his choices away forever, so that he never has to fail again. Peter laughs once without humor and coughs blood. He thinks of a boy with a cogitator, and a woman with pigeons, and a sister who asked for permission to burn on his left. He thinks of the way the hive sang when the sky turned to knives. He forgets a smell he loves, and the gap makes him steady, not weak. No, he says, we are not yours. He shoves the coil frame into the nail until it bites at his palm. He points the nail not at the cryptek's body, but at the smear of phase behind it, where its geometry must come home after each excursion. Mantis widens the beat until it covers the foundry floor like a rug. Rocket overcharges the coil because this scream might be the last they get. Nebula fires into nothing, where a future limb will be, because she has learned this fight's grammar. The nail hits the cryptek's return vector. Space folds the wrong way and then refuses to fold at all. For the first time since it woke in this city, the cryptek miscalculates. It rides its own pulse into the bell frame and drives its chest through a bronze mouth. The bell rings once, and the sound is a funeral. The Eon field flickers. The stave's head craters, not shattered but less certain. The cryptek tears free, with half a breastplate missing. It retaliates with precision. It draws a line of denial across Peter's chest, just above the first, and this time it cuts the second thing. The sympathy between him and the Milano sail. The link does not break, it sours. He feels the drive flinch into a wrong harmony and then cling. He knows a pilot's horror. His ship will obey, but it will whisper the enemy's cadence as it does. Mantis screams. It is small and raw. The Eon field tried to write a quiet into her work, and she denied it. It carved a counterstroke through the empathic muscle she has trained all her life. She drops to one knee, and a line of blood traces her temple. Groot throws a panel of bark in front of her, takes a Gauss kiss across his core and grows through the pain, as if building a wall between breaths. Agnes steps in, set to purge, but Holt slams his staff to the floor. "Hold," he says, harsher than command, kinder than fear. "The bells." He turns to the Vox bead at his collar. "Vox Chaplain, sound the nave. All bells. Canticle of recognition. Now." In the cathedral above, the old loud-hailers cough, stall, then find voice. A hymn moves through stone and wire, not louder than war, just more patient. The bells around them answer, not in sequence, but in stubborn accord. Their tones are imperfect. Their imperfections are human. Their humanness is a splinter in the cryptek's math. The cryptek recalculates quickly. It lifts a hand to erase the bell's insistence. A pulse comes down through the bedrock like a knuckle rapping a table. It is not rescue. It is not a miracle. It is the astropathic choir touching a distant, endless light and dragging a single hot thread of it through their own heads until their noses bleed. For half a breath, the Astronomican's taste is everywhere, a tang of gold and salt in graveyards and home. It tells the cryptek, "You are noticed by something you cannot name." The cryptek sours. Pride learns again. It steps back through a vector that still admits defeat. Is delay, not end. It goes. It does not flee. It refuses to have its schedule ruined by bells and human stubbornness and a bruise of starlight. Codex note. Aeon stave contact creates a chronal necrosis in neural and sympathetic linked tissues, degrading recall and harmonic control. Layered communal cadence, hymn, bell, astronomican trace, forces phase solutions to resolve within human temporality for fractions sufficient to puncture. Peter kneels amid bronze and dust. He cannot summon two names that matter to him. He can feel their outlines like empty frames. His chest burns with lines that do not bleed. The Milano answers his query with a hungry purr that is not hers. He swallows anger because he cannot afford it. He looks at Mantis. She nods once, eyes overbright. "I hold," she says. It is both report and refusal. Holt does not offer comfort. He offers weight. "You refused when a clean calculation would have excused you," he says. "That purchase buys you judgment, not mine. Higher." His eyes flick to the ceiling as if he sees beyond the hive's roof to a throne. None of them are permitted to imagine fully. You will stand before a light that picks men apart as if they were books, and you will be told the cost and whether you may pay it. Agnes wipes soot off her face with the back of her hand. "We lost 9 in the bell foundry," she says, voice low. "We broke a priest and a weapon. Neither stays broken, but both will remember us. That will have to suffice until we give them more to remember." They carry the wounded up through incense again. The air evacuees on the nave steps make way for the Sister Marshal because her armor is smoking, and her face is clean with purpose. The Vox Chaplain sits with blood down his chin, eyes unfocused, whispering that same canticle into a rosary of cable in his hand. A novice changes the drip on a grenadier whose arm was unmade in the first hour and tells him about a bird she saw once that lived in the lowest light. Holt sends the orders that are not about heroism, but about keeping praise from wasting men. "No one chases the cryptek," he says. "We hold corners. We train guns at stairs. We clean wounds with boiled water and prayer in equal parts. Admiral, you will give me a corridor to orbit. The city is no longer the battlefield that needs us most." Soren nods as if his spine might break. "One last path through the teeth," he says. "I will open the eastern corridor with a lie and shut it with a hymn. 30 minutes of clear flaming. After that, I cannot promise anything except that we will die politely." Navula tests the Milano systems, while Rocket listens to the drive with his cheek to the hull. He hears the new sourness in its song. He does not flinch, We can fly, he says. But the sail hums their null taste. If we unfold wrong in the warp's neighborhood, we might not come back with all the same edges. We will not wander, Drax says. He ties the last knot in the bandage across Peter's chest, hands steady. We will go in a line. We will go toward the judgment. We will be measured and found heavy enough to do harm. Mantis blinks away dizziness. She touches the coil frame with a fingertip and flinches, not from heat, from something in it that now wants to stain her mind. Groot pushes her hand gently away and says, "Lo, I am Groot." The meaning is simple and wide. You do not have to touch everything to carry it. Holt's vox bead crackles and then hardens into the voice of someone far beyond this room. It is a voice woven from 100 astropaths, speaking in chords to make a single shape that can be understood by men who still have blood. By mandate Beta Fidelis of the Ordo Hereticus, it says, Xena's combat assets previously tolerated in extremis are to be brought to the throne's light for sanction. Failure to do so risks null contagion of local theologic and psychogenic matrices. Custodial escort will meet at anchor. Prepare. Agnes makes the sign of the Aquila and inclines her head toward the Guardians. We will walk beside you until the goal takes you, she says. We will not drop our guns. We will not drop you. Peter wipes a hand across his face, leaving a streak of grime. He cannot find the word he wants for the smell of nowhere after rain, and the gap is a wound he will not let fester. He stands. We go, he says. We finish the work we started by stepping into a sky that wanted to kill us. The Admiral clears the corridor with careful lies. He orders a refueling pattern the enemy has learned to love, and then starves it at the moment when love becomes habit. The void shields shimmer one after another like eyelids. The eastern corridor opens like a canal cut through a riot. The Milano lifts with a sound that is part prayer, part wounded animal. She leans into the sourness and carries it like a scar. Sister Marshal Agnes stands at the hangar's lip, with 2 squads arrayed below the gold-blue hull. She does not salute. She nods once like a soldier at a comrade she chose. I will hold what you leave me, she says. Bring back permission to do what we just did without shame. Inquisitor Holt stands beside her, the city smoke blackening the hem of his coat. He raises his staff not as a blessing but as a measure. If you are unworthy, the light will scour you, he says. If you are worthy, the light will still burn. Either way, we will have the truth, and I can work with truth. Mantis touches the rail in the cockpit and keeps the beat steady enough for the sail to unfold into a safer ugly. Rocket's paws skate over the board without flourish. Nebula feeds the waypoints that Holt's relay whispered into their map. Lines that avoid the worst eddies and invite the proper dangers. Drax straps in with the care of a man who has learned to respect momentum. Gamora touches Agnes's pauldron once, quick, a soldier's benediction returned. They rise into a sky that is all ash and geometry. The Necron net shifts to close. Monoliths turn faces that are numbers. The Admiral's last guns speak. Thin threads stitched precisely into seams that look like luck and are not. The corridor holds. The Milano climbs out beyond the sainted rail and the Manufactorum scars and the brave squalor. The hive shrinks to a chapel in a sea of iron. The warp mutters. The ether fold sail opens. It sings the wrong song and the right one, braided. The cryptek watches from a void lip, staff remade, disc eye narrowed. It records their signature. It sees the coil's residuum in their drive. It makes a mark in a schedule written on the inside of a tomb. It will come again. The Milano enters the fold like a knife sliding between ribs. On the bridge, the lamps dim a fraction too much and then recover. Peter feels the wound in his chest like a cold wire. He puts his hand over it, not to hide it, but to remind it that he decides what his scars mean. Mantis breathes. Groot hums an old forest syllable. Nebula watches for logic plague in the nav and kills 3 small pieces of it without ceremony. Rocket listens to the sail and begins to write a new math for how to make it betray the enemy's expectations without betraying the ship. Drax looks at the dark and sees a job. Behind them, the hive holds because it does not know how to fail anyone but itself, and even that reluctantly. In front of them, a path opens toward a fortress planet whose towers are cathedrals of judgment and whose guards wear gold like a condemnation. Between, the fold is a wound that knows their names even if some of those names have scabbed. Holt watches the contrail fade. He turns away when it is gone, not before. He descends into the city again, into stairs and corners and dry throats, to hold what can be held. He does not pray for them. He prays for his own men. His prayer is a task list. He's answered by bootfalls and the sound of a city breathing. The day does not end. It turns into another kind of work. The Necrons set their metronomes. The humans set their songs. The difference is not semantics. It is the only reason there will be anyone still praying when a ship returns with a scar that a throne judged and a mandate to turn mercy into doctrine. The escort finds them in the dark between breaths. A prow of gold knives the fold, and a voice that has never learned to shout orders them to hold a straight course and think simple thoughts. On the auger, the ship reads as a lean blade with a name that tastes of dust and victory. A second signature yokes to it, colder, silent. A black prow with no transponder and a wake that eats echoes. Boarding clamps kiss hull to hull. The gold ship sends 2 shapes across on a prayer-thin line. Men the size of statues, with faces that refuse permission to be read. They step through the Milano's hold with measured weight, red plumes quiet, halberds folded close. Every motion a verdict. Behind them, 3 women without a breath of presence follow, eyes clear as winter. The air bows away from them instinctively. Custodes, silent sisterhood, Nebula says under her breath, as if naming a storm changes nothing but posture. Drax inclines his head. He does not look away. The first custodian removes his helm and is not younger for it. Shield Captain Cyrus Cool, he says, tone that same blade. By seal of the High Lords and the Ordo Hereticus writ, you will be conveyed to the Sanctum Imperialis. Your weapons remain holstered unless asked. Your ship's heart will be bared to the machine god's gaze and bound until judgment. No one here wishes you dead yet. Peter nods. He has learned the grammar. We go, he says. The Medici team crosses next, robed and efficient, followed by a robed figure whose voice is 2 melodies not quite aligned. Navigator Primus Heliana Vex, she murmurs, third lid sliding across a silvered eye. I will not let you die on the way to the throne. I will not let you drift either. In the small hours of the voyage, the Milano's hold becomes a chapel and a Medici ward. Mantis lies on a pallet, while a chirurgeon inks thin sigils at her temples with a needle that hums with sanctioned quiet. The silent sister standing at her head does not speak. Her presence is a clean subtraction that stops the etherfold sourness from crawling across the empath's cortex. It is like breathing in a room where all the air has been counted. Mantis whispers to no one, and then to Groot. I can still count mine. I can still count yours. Peter sits on a bench, while a Medicae Auspex reads the cold scars the Eonstav wrote through him. The display shows 2 lines of denial like frost in summer. You took a weapon built to erase choice, the Medicae says. Clinical, not unkind. It will heal crooked. You will reach for memories and sometimes take the outline instead of the picture. Do not mistake the outline for absence. Rocket has the drive's cowl open. He works in a triangle with a mechanicus engineer and a custodian kneeling surprisingly easily beside Grease. Rocket points with a spanner. See that stutter? That's outtake Grease in my song, he says. The engineer makes gentle binaric apologies to the machine and the sign of the cog. The custodian listens and learns because he can. Because this is a fight too. Cyrus Call and Gamora walk the bay perimeter in a loop that becomes a problem set. Your method disregarded ritual, he observes. It succeeded because the city itself consented. It succeeded because people held, she answers. Ritual built them to hold. My method taught the enemy to hesitate before rewriting a street with people on it. She lifts her chin. You do not approve of improvisation. I do not approve of chaos, he says. But I understand that order without mercy becomes a mausoleum. My brotherhood was born in a mausoleum. We do not envy it. In the chapel, Drax kneels in front of a bronze Aquila. He says nothing. He is not a man given to words when no one needs them. The silent sister who stands near him watches with the blank attention of someone whose work is to be a wall. He respects her silence the way he respects the rock under a foundation. Holt is not here to argue. His absence has the weight of a mentor's trust and a command that is still binding. In his place, Cyrus takes the debate without enjoying it. Dogma protects the weak from the strong when the strong are having a bad day, he says quietly to Peter. Cost is how we keep score when the day refuses to end. Your people carry cost well. The question before us is whether you can carry it under orders. Peter meets his gaze. He does not flinch. Orders I can live with. Orders I can't will break in my hands, he says. I will still live with the breaking. The escort holds fast. The void prickles. Somewhere ahead, Terra's lighthouse burns a straight line through a sea that eats angles. Heliana Vex sits in a chair that was bolted to the deck on a day when men needed to sit and look at the dark and teach their eyes not to lie. The Astronomicon is clean, she murmurs. It tastes like salt and iron and a dead star. It tastes like home. The intercept comes without torpedoes. The black prow sidles across the fold wake and spits a boarding line like a tongue. It is a sanctioned throat, a corridor of hard light laid from ship to ship by those who own the light. A sigil burns on the far threshold. The eye, barbed, surrounded by a wreath of tools and bones. The man who walks it wears the rosette like a dagger and keeps his hands empty like a promise he does not intend to keep. His hair is white without age. His eyes are kind until you look hard. Inquisitor Magister Kaiso Ren, he says, and inclines his head to Cyrus as an equal who disagrees. Ordo Xenos, Istvanian branch. I claim emergency co-custody of the assets for optimization before presentation. The air tightens. The silent sister's eyes become colder. Cyrus's halberd unfolds by an inch. Claim noted, he says. Denied. Queso smiles as if he's correcting a student gently. You transport a solution to a class of wars that has bled us for 10,000 years, he says, gesturing at the drive, Mantis, Rocket's tools. Blackstone fields can be inverted by their etherfold song. Empathic cadence allows the city to breathe through a null. Give me a day, and I can craft a doctrine that turns their improvisation into a method. Give me a blade, not a story. Gamora steps into the line of the conversation because she recognizes the shape of the knife. Your method eats the living to feed itself, she says. I know men like you. You're honest about it. That is the only difference. Kaiso nods as if she has praised him. Weight and measure, he says. The throne teaches us to put suffering on scales. The light tells us how much it buys. I will lobotomize nothing I cannot replace. The empath would be spared if she breaks clean. The tree becomes a spine for an engine that can grow fresh conduits on the fly. The rodent makes nails that sing forever. He turns to Peter. And you, Lord Quill, become a trigger man with good instincts, freed from the superstition that the way people feel matters as much as the math. Cyrus's voice is winter. You presume authority you do not possess. I assume responsibility you are too noble to take, Kaiso says softly. Radicals save cities while Puritans write elegies. Let me save more. Mantis stands. Her palms are sweaty. The Silent Sister's field presses against her like a gentle door she might lean into forever. She steps away from it intentionally and feels everything return with knives. No, she says. And there is a tremor. But there is also steel. We are not safer as parts. Rocket taps the drive's cowl with the wrench. You'll get more yield if you keep the rodent happy, he draws, and the sarcasm is sandpaper thin. That's math too. Queso's eyes stay kind. I do not enjoy witnessing avoidable deaths, he says, but I have lived through more necessary ones than any of you can count. This is not a seizure. It is a petition under law. Give me an hour with your song, and my sisters and I will give you a device that makes this outtake avoid every city we light. Cyrus's halberd points just enough to count. An hour violates the seal of conveyance. Terror waits. Queso extends one hand, and the corridor of hard light darkens by a shade, because he brought something with him that likes to drink. It is a portable null cage, a pet absence, humming in its frame. The Silent Sister's gaze hardens because tools like that do not belong here. Their leader takes a step. Her presence eats warmth as she moves. The navigator at the back of the bay inhales sharply. Heliana's third eye opens fully, and the warp in her veins makes an ugly color around the pupils. She stares through metal, through gold, through lore, into something that does not move. Stop, she whispers. Listen. She reads her tarot in the dark without cards. The Imperium's greatest lighthouse burns a thin filament through her skull. Her teeth ache. She swallows blood. Hold, she whispers louder. Hold. The hull groans. The fold flexes. Something bright and very far speaks to the ship in a grammar that includes gravity and guilt. Cyrus does not pretend to hear words. He has never needed the words. He understands the command. He lowers the point of his weapon as if bowing to someone standing between seconds. Queso straightens. He feels it too. He is stubborn, but not suicidal. He puts his hand down. Very well, he murmurs. Another time then. I will see you again under kinder paperwork. He looks at Mantis, and there is genuine regret in the angle of his mouth. You will decide you are a tool eventually. Ask to be sharpened before someone tries to use you dull. He withdraws. The corridor of light thins and snaps. The black prow pulls away with quiet contempt. The gold holds position like liturgy in armor. In the silence, Peter exhales. He did not know he was holding that breath. Cyrus turns his helm in his hands. He could say the sign was contrived. He could bark about navigators seeing omens in furnace flare. He does not. Reach the throne, he says, as if repeating something that arrived from a place he is allowed to love but not name. They make the last leg without interruption. Terror grows out of the dark like a memory of warmth. The curve of a world layered in light. The void around it is busy with ships the size of cities and ships that could hide behind statues, each moving with lanes of permission. The Palatine Gate bites the night with teeth of adamantium. The palace rises beyond, a continent of gold and black and pilgrimage. They pass under the guns of the ring like men walking under a vault of old saints. The custodian's ship speaks names faster than any mouth can shape them. Seals unfold. Space narrows into the mouth of a harbor, where the air already smells of incense and promethium. Landers wheel like black beetles with banners. Choirs of vox carry litanies without words. The ramp kisses stone polished by 10,000 boot soles, and 1,000 banners dragged in victory, and 1,000 dragged in mourning. The heat under the mountain is not weather. It is the palace's lungs. Custodians stand like ideas made flesh. The silent sisterhood is a line of winter. Collegia Titanica banners hang like shadows of giants. A single bell rings somewhere very far away and very near. They walk a processional route that wants to grind men into humility. Peter does not kneel. He bows with his head and keeps his hands open. Gamora walks as if she has walked into more thrones than most men can name. Drax's footsteps slow a fraction. Giant statues of heroes he has never heard of watch him with compassion he distrusts. Rocket tucks his hands into his kit and pretends his heart rate hasn't changed. Nebula's face is calm because she has practiced this expression in more dangerous rooms. Mantis keeps her eyes on the floor until the air changes and demands respect upward. Blanks join the procession as they approach the inner gates. The world quiets in concentric circles. Psychers in the walls, chained by duty and adoration, take breath together. The final doors do not look like doors. They look like destiny engraved and gilded. They part anyway. The audience is not a conversation. It is a measurement. They stand in a chamber where the atmosphere itself is a vow. The light is not bright. It is accurate. The dais at the far end climbs in hard, kind planes, and on it sits the thing that keeps man's faith pointed towards something bigger than teeth. A throne that is a machine, that is a tomb, that is a lighthouse. The body on it is dead and not dead, king and meal, beloved and terrifying. No one speaks the name. Everyone speaks to it. The custodian escorts kneel with their halberds grounded. The sisters stand and accept the pain of breathing here with the stillness that is their gift. A man in black with a halo of office reads their deeds in a voice that is not entirely his own. The words do not matter. The weight does. Peter looks up and feels something lay his life out in a line, moments like beads on a string. The day a boy learned the names of his errors. The hour a man chose not to trade the world for a clean story that would have saved his family. His hand almost closes around a memory that still will not turn all the way. And the light says, yes, you are missing a piece, and still you are whole enough to be asked more. The light drills through Gamora and finds the assassin layered over the daughter, layered over the soldier, layered over the woman who refused to be one man's argument. It notes her economy with violence. It recoils from nothing in her because she recoils from nothing in herself. Drax stands under it, and it finds the ache like a fresco under paint. It presses on the names he does not say and watches him steady himself rather than break. It respects him by not comforting him. Rocket is measured in the units he understands. Tolerances, heat thresholds, failure modes, expected yields under fire. It loves him by telling him the truth. You will never get a clean run, and still, if you add this brace and remove this vanity, the beam will hold. Nebula is weighed for angles and the knives of her mind. It notes the places where cruelty has become caution and refuses to shame her for the math she chooses to do quickly. It requires that she audit her own audit journal under sanction. Mantis lifts her face last. The light does not touch her the way it touches weapons. It touches her the way it touches bells. It does not ask her to be stronger. It asks her to be cleaner. No words pass between throne and petitioners. The room stills around the transmission, and transmission here is not speech. It is selection and binding. 3 images climb out of the dark of the vault, as if memory is a projector with a hand behind it. Terra as a city of ships lined with refugee children. The Guardians assigned to carry mercy across lanes of ordnance as the light rips their edges and returns them thinner but not less. The same guardians wandering the long war as free blades, printing doctrine out of improvisation until men love them the way they should love saints and then die for it. The same guardians kneeling here, taking a seal that bites, becoming something with a sigil on it that makes doors open and closes options with equal ease. The choices do not spin, they sit. The light does not help them choose. It teaches them that choice here is neither romantic nor cruel. It is simply a bill. Cyrus Call does not interrupt. He stands, a human wall, and an instrument of the throne that chooses men who will say yes to wait. The master of the Astronomicon, whose name is not spoken here, flares a candle wick of that same far fire and lets them taste duty not as a story, but as metal on the tongue. Mantis nearly collapses. A silent sister steps one pace closer, and the pressure eases enough to breathe, not enough to forget. Rocket's paws flick at an imaginary dial, because dials help with truths larger than engineering. Drax watches the play of shadow on a statue's jaw and thinks of different kinds of vows. Nebula measures cost like a general at a map. Gamora watches Peter without telling him she is watching. The light recedes by a breath. The robed mouthpiece of the throne speaks in the tone of a verdict that still leaves room for appeal. "You will go out bearing an aquila that bites," he says. "You will not go where your hearts want when your mandate says otherwise. You will not break dogma except where dogma is a danger to the weak, and then only with witnesses who will testify against you if you lie to yourselves about why you broke it." He looks at Mantis. "You will not lay your hands on a city without a sister standing within 3 paces. You will not hold more than 10,000 minds to steadiness in any hour without rest, and you will account for the cost with days of quiet after, or you will be unmade." He looks at Rocket. "You will not unfold your etherfold sail within a blackstone field, unless a tech priest signs the coil and a custodian hears the sign. You will log every nail you drive into a null, as if each were a life. Mechanicus right will seal your work. Pride is theft." He looks at Nebula. "Your angles will be reviewed by men who do not love you. You will present your projections with alternatives you dislike. You will be required to argue against yourself once in every council." He looks at Gamora. "Kill clean. Do not instruct the young in your economy unless they have already learned waste elsewhere. Keep the blade for the places where no blade will be worse." He looks at Drax. "You will be witness. You will say when the bill is too high. You will not always be obeyed. You will speak anyway." He looks at Peter last. "You will carry the seal and the song. You will choose when no one else wants to. You will stop when the sister says stop. You will kneel when the custodian tells you kneeling will keep men alive. You will stand when kneeling would purchase nothing." Heliana, Vex bows until her head nearly touches her knees. The far fire hisses softly and withdraws to the lighthouse. It does not bless. It votes. They file out not triumphant. They are permitted to go. A custodian hands Peter a case the size of a prayer book. It is heavy. Inside on red velvet sits a small aquila wrought from something that was once gold and is now duty. It is hooked to a chain of oaths. The clasp bites when it closes around his neck. Power scaling interlude. 2. Sanction binds their improvisation to ritual. The etherfold sail can pulse inside null geometries only when bracketed by litany and mechanicus sign, twice per solar day, before psychogenic feedback risks collapse. Mantis's empathetic reach stabilizes crowds but must be bounded by silent sister, null fields. Beyond 5 minutes at city scale leads to hemorrhage. Coil nails work against Necron phase only when paired with communal cadence, bells, hymn, measured drum. That forces phase resolution inside human time. Nebula's predictive models are powerful, but prone to bias under battle stress. Mandated cross-check reduces catastrophic overfit. Custodian oversight is not decoration. A gold halberd on deck means plan compliance is law. They are turned toward the exit by hands that never shove. The palace rearranges around them as if to prove that the Imperium can guide men without consuming them entirely. Along the long walk back to the hangar, pageantry flares and subsides like a pulse. Scriptorum acolytes intone the names of saints whose job was bookkeeping. A line of petitioners kneel without looking up as the alien passes. A child looks straight at Groot and smiles because forests are not doctrinal. Cyrus walks beside Peter without speaking until the last door. "If you break this," he says finally, "do it in front of someone who will write it down." He means it as a gift. "I'll do it loud," Peter says. He touches the aquila at his throat. It presses into skin like a reminder that love is supposed to leave marks. In the Medicare dock, a silent sister studies Mantis with professional care. She lifts a hand and lets the empath rest fingers on the back of it for a second. It is not comfort. It is acknowledgement that absence can be kind if it chooses. Heliana adjusts her harness and looks out at a sky that is half him. "It will be worse out there," she says. "The light helped you once. It will not help every time." That is how we know it is worth following. Rocket closes the drive's cowl with a click that feels like a promise made to metal. Nebula clips a new seal onto her bracer. Mechanicus wax and a thin string of hair from a sister who agreed to stand on their deck. Drax tests the weight of the seismic charge and finds it honest. Gamora slides a new blade into the sheath of duty and refuses to name it. They strap in. The custodian's ship noses out first, cutting a lane with authority rather than speed. The Milano follows with the patience of someone who has learned that fast is not the same as alive. The palace falls behind them and does not change shape. The throne does not watch them go. It is busy burning. Beyond the ring, the void opens into lanes of traffic and faith. Cold signatures wait like old debts. The Necron's schedule glints on distant scopes. Inquisitor Kaiso Ren's shadow brushes their course like a memory of temptation that hopes to be an appointment. The fold complains. The sail hums, wrong and right in measure. Peter glances at his crew. They meet his look with the assent of people who chose before this room to be a family, and then chose it again under weight. He looks at Cyrus. The custodian inclines his head a fraction. Permission is not the right word. Recognition is closer. "Reach the city," Peter says. "Hold the line. Make it law." He touches the aquila, and it bites again as if to say, "Bleed carefully." They fall back into a sky that remembers their heat. The escort peels away like a blessing that refuses to flatter. The Milano drops through ash and him, her sails set to the sanctioned pulse that's been stamped and witnessed. The aquila at Peter's throat is heavy, not ornamental. He touches it once and feels the bite, as if the throne presses its thumb to the back of his neck to keep his head up. Megaborealis answers their return with a rumble of drums on decks, and a bell struck 3 times. The city has not fallen, it has become deliberate. Spire Litany calls units to colours. Voxnet breathes measured orders. Hold stairs. Anchor at transepts. Cleanse with directed flame. Rescue the slow. Holt's voice threads it all. Salt, iron, law, speaking to a city that believes him. Sister Marshal Agnes meets them on the balcony with soot across her cheek like a stripe earned. She sees the seal at Peter's throat, the new Mechanicus wax at Nebula's wrist, the silent sister that stepped off the custodian's shuttle and now stands 3 paces from Mantis like a winter kept kindly. She nods once, the motion a contract renewed. "You carry chains that are also keys," she says. "Good. We use keys where hammers chip saints." Holt looks older by a year that took an hour. His staff is nicked and cleaned, the wood oiled like a habit. "Your sanction?" he asks, no softness. "Given," Peter says, "with teeth." He names the conditions without looking away. Sister within 3 paces when Mantis works. Mechanicus sign before the sail sings. Coil nails logged as lives. Nebula's angles with a counter-argument. Gamora's economy taught only to the already wounded. Drax as witness at the cost point. Peter to kneel or stand by gold command. Holt listens, and the smallest measure of tension leaves his shoulders. "Then we act," he says. Nebula lays a new map on the parapet. Tomb roads pulsing green like veins in a corpse that refuses to admit it died. A central knot throbs under the eastern artery. The scheduler's crown node, a logic altar that breathes orders into stone. The cryptech signature coils around it like a careful hand. A darker absence hums beside it, the null engine recovering its poise. Rocket opens the case containing the nails he made on the way back, each coil wrapped in sanctified copper, each clip stamped by a Magos, who muttered apologies to a machine that wants to be brave. 2 sanctioned pulses on the sail, he says. That's all the light gave me. We pair each with a chord, bells, drum, hymn, measured breaths. We put the nail into the crown, and we hold, while it decides that dying is cheaper than learning us again. Mantis stands between Groot and the Silent Sister, and tests her reach, the way a diver tests water with a hand. The sister's field is a wall, but her consent is a door in it. Mantis steps through in rhythm, not in hunger. I can hold them steady for 5 minutes at city scale before the bleed, she says clean. I will not go longer. If I go longer, you stop me. Drax ties a new strap across his shoulder with a soldier's competence. I will say when the price turns our strength into murder, he says. I will not be subtle. Agnes snorts once in approval. Subtlety kills at the wrong end. Holt's plan is a page that respects the binding. Sister squads hold the cathedral district and feed cadence into the drumnet. Grenadiers seed the arteries with blessed mirrors and promethium traps. Magos lines voice the bells with cogitators that can strike true even if a ringer faints. Kazan pattern detonators, built by Rocket under Mechanicus eye, ride on servo skulls with gold wire, as if that could teach them about grace. They move. The city's heart has a beat, now that Mantis does not have to invent. She locks it to the sister's presence, like a sailor knots a line to appear. The drums pick it up. Foundry mallets on fuel drums, boots on catwalks. The flat hand of a priest on the flank of a warhorse. The bells find the drum and the hymn threads them. The city breathes. They descend the east artery, past frescoes that have acquired fresh smoke and fresh names. Vox relays mark the crown node's pulse rising. Scarab flocks swarm like dead bees. Sister flamers make rain that burns upward. A Necron immortal leans into a sightline. Gamora spends 2 motions and removes its face, then glides on because points are not trophies. The scheduler's throat is a shaft lined with green-lit filigree. Holt stops at the rim. He sets hexagrammats like a mason sets wedges. When the nail hits, he says, they will try the old answer. Erase names and motives. Think in numbers if you must, but keep one thing that is not a number. A scent, a promise, a face you do not have the right to forget. Peter picks the child with the paper saint. He holds the grin that flashed when Groot grew the bridge. He puts it in his quiet like a candle in a dark pocket. The Aquila chain warms against his skin. The cryptech comes like a certainty that pretends to be a question. It does not arrive with fanfare. It is simply there, staff humming, disc eye narrowed, the scheduler's lines kissing its ankles like loyal currents. Behind it, The null engine unfolds plates of black stone with the anonymity of a tomb waking. Holt's wards flare within permitted margins. The silent sister steps forward, and the air's taste turns honest. Agnes angles the sisters into a chevron that protects the empath and the engineer. Drax anchors the frame of the coil. Nebula sets her rifles, 2 overlapped fields, to deny the hinge. Rocket lifts the nail. It feels heavier now that it has been seen by law. The cryptek opens its hand. Symbols glitter between fingers. A polite erasure offered like a gift. The city's drum says no. Bells say no in bronze. The hymn says no in the key children can hum. The silent sister's field says nothing, which is a larger no than music can carry. The symbols lose patience. The null engine rolls forward. Absence spills. Holt's litany does not detonate. It drives pegs into the dirt of time and holds them just enough that Peter can plant a foot. First pulse, Rocket says, jaw tight. Peter meets the sister's eyes. She does not speak. She grants. He nods and throws the nail. The coil screams under law. The sanctioned pulse rides down the shaft in the measure of the drum. It hits the crown node like a thrown oath and forces it to choose between 2 temporal solutions that are equally wrong. The node stutters. The cryptek absorbs the error and bleeds it into the scheduler, stylish, monstrous, and prepares to write the correction. Nebula stitches fire into the disc hinge and into the future position of a hand. Gamora slides under a beam that tries to be fired in the previous second and plants a charge in a seam that did not exist until the nail insisted on noise. Drax braces the nail's frame with his back and becomes infrastructure. The scheduler answers with a hiss that is not sound. The tomb roads brighten, meaning to overrun denial with volume. Mantis lifts both hands. She doesn't push. She offers shape. The sister stands within the light and keeps her clean. The cryptek adapts. Its staff's head hums with a whisper that reaches for the nail's song, tasting it, wanting it. It tries the old wedge of removal in Peter's mind and finds the candle there, stubborn, small, rude. It tries to step forward in 3 moments. Holt throws 3 hexagrammats like nails and staples it for a breath within the city's time. The null engine rips a strip of bell tone out of the air and eats it. Silence swells. The second coil pounds in Rocket's hands, want and warning. We've got 1 pulse left, he snaps. Use it now and the sail sleeps for sunset and moonrise. He doesn't look at Mantis because he has learned how to respect the work he cannot fix with metal. Peter holds. Agnes burns 2 ranks of warriors and takes a Gauss score on her pauldron, smoke threading up like an old incense. The cryptek lifts the staff to write an ending through Drax. The sister's head turns a fraction. Her field flexes. The writing falters like chalk on wet stone. Drax grins with no joy and leans harder into the frame. The scheduler chooses the path of least pain for itself. Amplify the null. Erase the cadence. Make men count in zeros. The absence swells. Mantis staggers. Blood traces a thin line from her nostril. She shakes her head very small and says, "Stop," in a voice that does not ask for argument. Peter hears the word like a gavel. He steps off the trigger. The second pulse stays caged. For a terrible beat, nothing answers the enemy's efficiency. That beat becomes a lesson. Drax speaks into the silence because witness is duty. Dropping the spire now buys minutes, he says, looking at Holt. It spends the wrong lives. I don't accept that price. There is another way. Holt does not try to outstare him. He turns his head, angles his mind, searches for a loan he can take instead of the one the enemy is offering. Flood the tomb roads, he says quiet. Not with water, with machine wake. Magos, reverse the draft on the generatorum and vent the cooling lines into the shaft. The steam carries oils, ions, grit, the taste of labor. It makes the world dirty. Their math hates dirt. The Margos churs alarm and glory, and slams a palm down on a panel that buzzes like a hive. Valves turn with a century stubbornness. The shaft exhales a lungful of industrial weather. Hot, mineral, conductive, honest. The null meets it and finds that counting is more difficult in a storm full of names. Agnes laughs once, the sound of a soldier who sees a tactic teach a doctrine, and pours flame low into the waste of the cloud. It rolls, it coats, it conducts. Nebula keys the drumnet into a staccato that aligns with the generator pistons. The bells pick it up. The city remakes its rhythm into something more like work than choir. Now, Holt says, and Rocket breathes out, very slow. Peter gives the sister a fraction of a nod. She permits. He throws the second nail. The sanction pulse hits through steam and song and strikes the crown node as if a foundry hammered a saint's name into it. Phase solutions collapse into human time for 3 long heartbeats. The scheduler's lattice gapes. The cryptek flares its disk, reflex, pride, and Nebula's shots tear the hinge so the eye sticks open. A wound that shows everything. Gamora drives home. She does not waste flourish. A melter charge kisses the node's interface point and solves it into whispering heat. Drax's whole body becomes a lever and heaves the frame into a position the nail likes, not one the enemy wants. The sister's field stays steady and lets Mantis give the last of her 5 minutes to keeping the crowd above from breaking when the ground shakes like an oath being enforced. The crown node fails like a nobility, surrendering title to keep the estate. It folds with dignity. It bleeds light into old cracks. The tomb roads stutter. Scarabs stop in elegant confusion. The null engine drops a fraction, deflated, not defeated, and rolls back on plates that have lost 1 coordinate each. The cryptek turns its head, the tilt not disdain now, but a formal acknowledgement between professionals. It has lost a schedule. It refuses to lose its face. It draws a line through the air with the iron stave meant to amputate gratitude and insert regret. Holt answers by breaking his staff across his own knee and throwing both halves into the wave as pegs. They pin the line. The wave goes around. It writes nothing into them. The cryptek leaves with a punctilious nod, choosing to depart rather than risk being forced. It takes the lesson with it like a coin it intends to spend in a better market. The null engine withdraws without commentary, because commentary is a human vice. Silence lands, but it is not vacuum. It is the kind of quiet factories make when men lean on railings and watch their work breathe. Holt exhales without wasting it on relief. They will come again, he says. They will write a new math with our stubbornness in it. But the city will not be pinned today. Agnes lifts the flamer a fraction like a toast. We bought a day, she says. We buy another. Peter leans against the frame and lets his spine understand weight. The aquila presses into skin until it hurts good. He looks at Mantis. Her eyes are red but clear. She steps back into the sister's field with gratitude that is not submission. The sister inclines her head as if to say, "You did not try to swim the ocean alone. Good." On the balcony after, the drumnet thins to a heartbeat. Citizens carry barrels and icons and each other. The sky still holds smoke. The smoke now holds light. Holt stands with them and does not try to translate victory into anything dangerous. 3 paths were put to you, he says, very plain. There was never time for the first. The second would have turned you into a story we would have had to blaspheme later. The third ties you to our shame and our law and our hope. Peter nods. He does not make a speech. He opens the red velvet case again. The aquila is already around his neck, biting. He takes the spare seal inside a small cog and star stamped with Mechanicus and Inquisition sigils, and presses it to the Milano skin just below the cockpit glass. Groot curls a vine around it and grows a ring of living wood that makes it a wreath. Rocket takes a soldering iron and etches a Nova Star within the aquila, a simple 5-point flare drawn with a hand that doesn't tremble. Sanctioned servants, Holt says, not a title, a function. You will bleed with witnesses. You will make mercy that can be audited. You will keep your edges because we have written down where they may cut. Agnes steps close. She takes Peter's forearm, warrior to warrior. I do not like aliens, she says without apology. I do like saints who stand where the heat is. I will lie less to myself about you. It is acceptance, sharpened. Drax glances at a pile of rubble that once held a mural. He kneels and picks from it a broken saint's jaw and sets it back on the stone where the rest still smiles. Hold, he says to the city, and the city answers with work. Mantis sits with the silent sister on a step, while the Medici change the dressing on her temple. They do not speak. The sister offers a skin of water. Mantis drinks. She rests a hand on the sister's gauntlet. The null is a wall. Some walls are needed. Nebula finishes a report into a cogitator that will be read by men who do not love her. She includes an alternative plan to her own, arguing against herself because the mandate says she must. She hates it and does it with precision. Rocket logs the nails expended as if each is a name. He writes them in a tight hand. He doesn't crack wise. He knows what they bought. The Vox picks up the Admiral's tired tenor. Mega Borealis stands, Soran says to the fleet he browbeats into grace. Stand with her. Those that ran are forgiven. Those that held will be remembered properly. He does not say forever because he respects language. Night comes. It carries fresh sirens and fresh soup. The city eats and reloads. Holt writes the names of the 9 from the Bell Foundry and the 22 at the shaft, and the 3 who died holding the drum when the null tried to erode the beat. He does not put them into a speech. He puts them into a ledger. The ledger is a kind of prayer. In the quiet between alarms, Peter stands with Gamora above the generatorum where steam still sours the air. We could have taken the second path, she says, not accusing. We would have been quicker, freer. We would have bled differently. We would have become a story other people would use wrong, he answers. He touches the seal. This way, we get to choose when to be careful and when to be loud. We do it with witnesses. She nods. She looks out over the hive roofs and sees a million problems arranged like stars. She smiles without joy and without despair. We have work. They do not sleep so much as they rest their faces against function. The cryptek schedule loses a step. The null engine logs a new set of resistances. The city's children stop flinching when the bells ring and start lining their buckets to the drum. Morning shifts the ash to a lighter grey. Holt calls a small ceremony because men need small ceremonies like machine spirits need oil. He makes no speech. He sets the Aquila Nova Star standard on a pole by the spire gate and says, "If you see this, the holders of it will bleed with you under law." A woman who runs a canteen looks up and nods and goes back to bread. News travels without anyone carrying it. On a cruiser in high anchor, Ordo et Nos Inquisitor, Kaiser Len, reads the sanctioned dispatch and rubs his jaw as if it aches. He writes a note in a clean hand. Observe. Offer optimizations when their conscience cracks. Do not break the toy before the Emperor gets value. He underlines nothing. He smiles kindly at no one. Far below, in stone that keeps old arguments, the cryptek rebuilds the disc hinge and adds a ratchet to teach the weakness to behave. It burns the image of a 5-point star inside a bird's bite into a logic wall and writes, "Remember the noise." It schedules a second attempt for a different city with fewer bells. In a shadowed convent, more fortress than cloister, A line of novices read the field report directed to their order. The sister, who stood 3 paces from Mantis, writes in her own ledger that an empath can be trained not to drown if she is taught where to stand. She signs it with a mark that is not a name. On a forge moon, a tech priest receives a coil stamped with gold and tree sap and calculates that sanctification is a set of variables tied to compliance and courage. She smiles with half of her mouth because the other half forgot that function long ago. She authorizes a short run of braces designed to let nails sing louder without bending. In the dark between stars, a thing that eats prayers for sport tests the edges of a new icon and hisses because it does not like the taste of audit. It turns to other games where men ruin themselves without help. The epilogue in the hive is smaller. A child with a bent paper saint in his fist and a cogitator under his arm pauses at a corner where a new stencil dries on stone. An aquila biting a simple star. A wreath of living wood etched around it in childish lines. A small wrench scratched beneath like a joke that became a badge. He looks up at it and then out at the street. He takes a breath. He joins a line that moves not because it is forced, but because it has learned the cadence.